All right, it's time for another week. ZTGD Radio. This is episode 794. Even though I told you last week it was 792, I was wrong. This is for April 29th, 2024. And on the show this week, we got the Wormbird.
Yes, sir.
We want to welcome back Jay.
Buongiorno.
I know Anthony's coming. I don't know if Terrence is or not. He said nothing. What's he doing? He's supposed to come on here and talk about the crab game with me.
Oh.
I don't know. I'm sure he wants to talk about censorship in gaming.
Yeah, that's kind of the reason why I'm here, man. I've seen so much of that stuff on my timeline and in our own Discord and stuff like that too, and I just want to get my piece out. Because I do have a lot of thoughts on the situation with censorship and what's going on with like Stellar Blade and stuff like that. Not just that game specifically, but just across all media and the way the American culture handles censorship in general. I've always found to be a bit odd. So we'll talk about it.
Well, anyway, I'm used to starting with somebody else, so I don't know. Who wants to talk about video games? Ryan, do you want to go first?
I never get to go first, so
I'll
go
day.
first. Yeah. I actually played a decent amount of different games this week. So I played. Well, let me start with the stuff that I have been playing. That's not new. I finished Dragon Quest II. Did I say that last week?
I don't remember which Dragon Quest, but you did mention you finished one, so it's probably that one.
Well, I finished the first two in the last couple weeks. So, but anyway, just in case I didn't say it last week, I finished Dragon Quest II. The mobile version is definitely the way to play that game, or the Switch version, they're the same. But it's the worst Dragon Quest game for sure. I played Helldivers, of course, because I always play Helldivers. Jay and I have gone back and forth in the Discord about my hatred of the flying bot spaceships, and the press this button to team kill weapon that they've added. It was funny though. I did have somebody on my team earlier today that was using it very effectively as basically a long distance on demand cluster bomb, which is absolutely not what it was supposed to be used for, but it was working. So, I mentioned this in the Discord, but I'll say it. The weapon I'm talking about is the air exploding rocket launcher, where you're supposed to be able to shoot it in the air and it explodes in the air as well, so it takes out flying enemies. I have yet to see it be effectively used against flying enemies. Like I mentioned, basically what happens is you shoot the rocket out, it gets out, and then it explodes into a bunch of little rockets that sort of scatter. So I had somebody shooting it at a distance at groups of enemies on the ground, and it scattered and worked like a cluster bomb, but I've yet to see anybody use it in the air. I did, however, have somebody yesterday kill our entire team at Extraction. As we were getting ready
Ryan,
to get
you
on the
were playing with Ken yesterday?
I have not played that game since it came out. No, it was not me.
No, so as we were getting ready to get on Pelican 1, the guy shoots the thing, kills all four of us, and was like, "Oh, I just wanted to see what it did." I'm like, "Okay, well maybe see what it did when we're not all getting on the airplane."
But wouldn't have been as funny.
Yeah, that's true. I played some Terminated missions this morning because my personal quest was to kill bile spewers. Of course, I played 2 missions on a Terminated planet and didn't see a single bile spewer. But I still had a good time killing bugs. And I think I've landed on a bug loadout, at least for now. I like the what's it called? Incendiary breaker. So the shotgun that
so
shoots
good.
flaming shotgun bullets. And then the shield, and the quasar cannon, because the quasar cannon can one-shot chargers. So that's always helpful.
That's a great loadout. I use that same loadout oftentimes as well. I also am a big fan of the Eruptor as well, the new weapon, the sniper weapon, that thing. You can blow up a bug hole from like 10 billion miles away with that thing.
That's definitely
you can do
nice.
it silently. Yeah, it's very nice.
Yeah, the Eruptor's good too for like the brood commanders, because it'll take out their heads or legs in one shot. You just got to be real economical with it, because the reload, because it's bolt action, right? So you have to rechamber around after every shot. So it's you got to make sure you have something with a high rate of fire for when you get mobbed by a whole bunch of little guys. Although I imagine that it might be good to pair that with like the laser rover, because that thing could take out the little things while you're concentrating your fire.
If you have the weapons, Ryan, try Eruptor plus the submachine gun, handgun.
Yeah.
And then use the arc thrower as your sub.
Oh, okay.
That takes care of all the little mobs and stuff like that from a distance, while you use the Eruptor for bigger targets and far away distance. And it just messes up with the biospheres too. You can one shot them in the head using the Eruptor. It's a good mix, yeah.
Yeah, and then on the bots, I still haven't landed on what I like the best yet, but I do like the Dominator against them. That seems to work pretty well. And then the laser, like the laser machine gun, works really well too. So I go back and forth between those depending on what we're doing. But
you must master the art of the autocannon against bots, man. It makes the total difference.
I do like the autocannon against bots. The it is nice to have the shield because of the incoming fire. But the autocannon is definitely nice. I do like the fact that the Dominator can kill the shielded the enemies that carry the big shield. If you hit them, the Dominator can stagger them in one shot, and then one shot again can take off their arm. So it's pretty powerful against those things, which is nice. But yeah, that game's awesome. So I'm going to play it whenever I have an opportunity to play it. And I do love the fact that, despite the fact that I didn't participate at all in any of the major orders over the last week, I got all my medals for them. So I logged back in with 200 medals to spend, which is just a really great way to handle the economy in that game. And then I played some more Top Spin 2K25 for my review. The more, and this is why I wanted to keep playing it before I reviewed it, the more I play of it, the more I'm bothered by the lack of content. There's just not much here. Like the career mode is pretty thin. The trainings that you can do in the career mode are basically all the same thing over and over again repeated. There's not a lot of pro players, but that doesn't really bother me as much. There's just not much to do here. And it would be fine if there wasn't much to do. Again, it's a tennis game, so I don't expect sort of the depth and breadth of like a MLB The Show or even a NBA 2K25, which obviously is probably the deepest of all the sports games when it comes to stuff to do. But you can't sell it for $70. Or $120 if you buy the big fuck off edition. You just can't do it. So the game is very solid as a tennis game. It's going to get, I'm still hovering between a 7 and a 7.5 for me, just based on the strength of the tennis itself. But don't buy this game at $70. Wait, because it'll drop in price or it'll end up on Game Pass, and then it'll be a lot of fun to play. But don't pay $70 for it. There's just not, unless you're a huge tennis fan, there's just not that much here to do.
Dennis.
I have seen some people complaining about the controls being too complex. man, it's a sim game. Like, it's going to have complex controls. So if you're not looking for a sim tennis game, if you want to play like an arcade tennis game, this is not the game for you. There, you're going to get overwhelmed real quick. If you want to play an arcade tennis game, just play the best tennis game that's ever been created, Super Tennis on the Super Nintendo. Because this game is going to be way too complicated for you.
I mean, everybody
if
should play
go
Super
into it with
Tennis
that.
on the Super Nintendo.
Everybody should play Super Tennis all the time.
I think I might have missed that one.
Oh shit,
Super
dude!
Tennis?
Dude,
Yeah.
Oh god, it's so good.
Yeah.
it's one of the
Yeah.
best tennis games ever made.
It
All
is
right,
for sure.
I need to grab this for my deck.
Yep, it's a lot of fun. All right. And then let's talk about the newer, well, not newer, but new to me stuff that I played. So in the Sims Steam sale, I picked up Traveler's Rest, which is a really neat game. So for anybody who hasn't seen it or heard of it, it's basically like, it's a little like a mix between Moonlighter and Stardew Valley. You own an inn, and so your job is to, open the inn and serve customers and, make new recipes and brew beer and, create new different beers based on what you put in, or you can serve them water too, of course. But like, you have to make sure that your inn is stocked. You have to make sure that you're taking the time to, make the food that people want to eat. Because basically the way it works is you make the food and then you store it. So you're not cooking on demand. So it's way less stressful than it sounds like it would be. It's not like Cook Serve Delicious or whatever that game is called, or Overcooked. It's not like that. It's much chiller than that. But like, you'll have customers every now and then who get rowdy, and they'll start complaining at the table, and you can go over and try to calm them down, and sometimes that'll work. But sometimes when you try to calm them down, they'll stand up and they'll try to walk over to another table and complain to them, and you got to hit them with your mop and chase them out of your bar, basically. But then outside of that, you've got to like cut down trees to get wood, and mine for iron so that you can make nails, so that you can build more tables for your inn. You gotta, gather rock and stuff so you can do expansions to your inn and all that stuff. So there's a lot to it, and you kind of have to balance when you want to open the inn to make money and when you want to basically be doing your prep work. The nice thing is you can open and close the inn multiple times throughout the day. So it's not like Moonlighter where once you shut it down, the day is over. You can open and close multiple times. So if you're like yesterday, I ran out of water, so I had to run out and get some more. You can either run out and get some more real quick and come back in with everybody still in there, but you increase the chances of like the place getting dirty or people asking for stuff and not getting it. Or you can shut the inn down and go out, get your water, get yourself re-prepped, and then open it back up again. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun, and it's actually still on sale, I think, for $13 on Steam. So, it was definitely worth that for me, and it plays great on the deck. And then I also picked up in the Steam, well, not actually in the Steam sale because it just came out, but Rotwood, which is the new sort of screen-based roguelite from Clay Entertainment. It reminds me, it's set up like Cult of the Lamb or Hades, where it's sort of a side view isometric screen to screen beat 'em up kind of game. But you try to get further and further every run, and every room has something for you to earn. So like, you'll either get a new power that lasts for just that run, or you'll get currency or whatever as you go room to room, or you can find a merchant or a place to refill your potions or whatever. But it's like Hades and Cult of the Lamb, where it'll tell you what the next rooms are. There's like a little symbol at the bottom, and you can pick. Sometimes there'll be 2 options, sometimes there'll be 3 options, sometimes there'll be only 1 option as to which sort of room you want to go to next. And basically, you got to be a little bit strategic about, okay, do I want to try to get another power? Do I need to refill my potions? What direction do I want to go here? There's bosses and mini bosses. It's got a really, really cool art style. The animations in it are really great, especially for the enemies. Like the animations the enemies have when they get hit and stuff are really, really fun. So that's a really good game. I think the demo is still up. So if so, definitely check it out if that's the kind of game that interests you at all. Ken, there's no reason for you to check it out.
I wasn't going to.
And then let's see, what else have I played? I picked up Like a Dragon for the deck because it was $13 for the Hero Edition. But I haven't actually booted it up yet. But that's going to be sort of my side RPG. Since everybody's been talking it up, I figured it was past time for me to play it. I had downloaded it on my Xbox a long time ago, but I just don't have that much time to play on my consoles. So it'll be my lunch break game.
Have you played any of the Yakuza games at all, Ryan, or is this kind of the first one?
Played 0. Yeah, I finished 0.
Played 0. Oh, okay, gotcha. So you know some of the characters, but obviously you don't know the entirety. Okay, gotcha. Yeah,
correct.
You're in a perfect situation. Yakuza, Like a Dragon, kind of is the easiest one to get into, even if you don't know any of the other Yakuza characters, and they do a good job of kind of catching you up on some of the elements of any recurring characters that might show up, and I'm very much looking forward to hearing your impressions about that game because that game is something else.
As soon as everybody told me that I needed to play it as a Dragon Quest fan, it was on my radar. So, and I did like Yakuza 0 a lot, and had planned at some point going back and playing some of the other ones. The only other one I played, I should say, was Ishin. I didn't finish that though. I probably played 15 hours of that. Yeah, at some point I'll go back and play the other ones, but for now, Like a Dragon will be the next one on the list. I think that's it.
All right. Well, I want to welcome Anthony back to the show.
Hello.
We have like lots of returning people today. What's up?
Yeah.
I took a break for mental health, and I'll probably take more breaks for mental health.
I mean, you gotta take care of your mental health. That's just
nothing to do with the show, obviously. But
oh, please, being on here is a mental strain. I'm telling you
that.
The mental strain of not being listened to by anybody.
I probably much prefer that in comparison to my early time here, where we were being listened to by people and they did not like me.
They still don't like me. So, but they keep listening. It's like a hate listen. That's fine.
That's the reason why when it's just me and you, it's the unlistenable show.
That's right. Oh.
So speaking of Like a Dragon, I'm one of the people that told you to play it.
Yes, you are.
I like that game a lot. I have some issues with it, but they're pretty minor, and they're money is a big problem with that game, and I know why it is. But it's just one of those things where it's like when you're handing me a bunch of systems, like a job system, and the job system requires money, but you're not giving me really great ways, because this game does not give you money like the other Yakuza games do. Like, I mean, in 0, you have to make multi-millions, which is just absurd. And then in Kiwami, it was much easier to make money than 0, but you also didn't have to use it for leveling up. You don't have to use money to level up in Like a Dragon, but you need to constantly change your gear, otherwise you'll be held back, and gear costs money. And then if you switch jobs, you need all new gear, like new weapons, and that costs money. So now we're in this money pit problem, which I know what they're going for. I got it, but at the same time, it's a video game. So part of me is like, cool. I'm really glad you hand me this system that I can't really fully engage with right now. Great. However, the money making game, the one that gets you kind of the most money, is so much better than the fucking real estate in
Hmm.
Yakuza 0. Oh my god.
Oh yeah, I was not a fan of that.
Okay, so I don't know if you did it, but I did. I finished both the real estate and the uh Majima Hostess Club.
Yeah, the Hostess Clubs. Yeah,
I
I
did
did
both of
not
those.
finish them.
The Hostess Club is a breath of fresh air after just sitting there and mindlessly doing nothing, waiting for Kiryu to make money.
Yeah.
This is quick. This is a mix between both of those games. The mini game that you make money in is a mix of like both of those ideas. There's a hands-on element and then there's a hands-off element, but it's also a hands-off element that doesn't require you to sit there for like 10 minutes. It's fun. There's just it's just kind of like the way that the main story is going. They're clearly trying to push me into different jobs, and I am like, great, but I have like 10 levels in the job that I started with. So it's really hard for me to be like, I'm gonna start from square one. But so I took a break from that because I mean I've been kind of binging it anyways, and started up Sandland, and that game is everything I wanted it to be.
What is that game? Like, I have it and I booted up and like there's a cutscene and I got distracted. I never went
So
back to it.
so the story is that you're basically in the post-apocalypse, but you're playing as the son of Satan,
Okay.
Beelzebub.
Okay.
And Satan is not like the demons are not evil per se. They just don't like humans. Um, it's more of like they're a myth that's just alive. So all these myths around them, like, oh, they kill people and stuff. And Beelzebub's like, we don't kill people. What would we do without humans? Like, then we don't have any fun. They're like more tricksters. Anyways, I love the voice acting in this game, but the story basically is just that you are looking for water because you are in a desert, and that's how the story basically starts. I didn't finish the manga because I was reading them inside Shonen Jump, and I didn't pick up every Shonen Jump. And eventually, the story concluded, and I just didn't have all the issues. But I remember reading it and loving it because Akira Toriyama, rest in peace, could only draw like 7 faces. But his monster design and his vehicle designs are unmatched. Um, there's a reason why like Dragon Quest is so beloved, and part of it is that like all the monsters are great looking.
Yep.
So take that, put it into like an open world game that is not. It's more about exploration than it is like check off things on the list. Like go get all the feathers or flags or all the collectibles. It's not that type of open world. But it's mostly a tank game.
Yeah, it's
Um,
got like a vehicle combat bend to it.
yeah, and so that was the demo. The demo you could get out, but it was like it clearly focuses on the tank.
Yeah.
But there's other vehicles, there's mechs and stuff. Those are not spoilers. That's in the demo. They wanted you to see the mechanics, and it's quite a large open world. And I couldn't believe it. There's a stealth sequence in this game, and it's not bad. Clearly, it's taking from Metal Gear. It doesn't work as good as Metal Gear. Nothing does, but you have to you hold like the left trigger for or the left, L2 button to crouch, and you sneak around, and you can't be spotted by anybody. If you run, they'll hear you. But I snuck around a base, and you stealth takedowns on enemies and stuff. Um, Lots of treasure. I'm really tired of hearing Beelzebub say, I think I'll keep this for later. It's one of those things where it's like every game that's got an anime aesthetic or is based off of manga or whatever has like way too much of the same dialogue repeated. I find this is one of those, but it's so pretty. Holy shit! Um, and you can customize your tank. There's skill trees for your characters. Um, it's just this really fascinating game that's telling a fun story, um, but like clearly very dark. You know what, Ken? It reminds me of Biomutant in a way.
Oh snap!
Um, the world, that is, not so much the gameplay. The gameplay is nowhere near as like action sort of Devil May Cry level of combat like Biomutant, but
Yeah.
um, oh, I see that over there. Well, there's a resource over there. Oh, there's enemies. I kill them. They drop resources. If I run over, or blow up, you can do that too. Cactus. Cactus gives me supplies. Water is a big element, so like water will heal you. But if you die in combat, it'll take the rest of your water to revive you, so you don't die right away. There's other things that you can buy to, revive your or heal up and stuff. I'm kind of just shocked at how much polish there is in this, because in comparison, I reviewed Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, which I liked. I liked a lot, but that open world felt barren at times. Like I felt like I was like just kind of flying around and having to arbitrarily collect orbs. This not so much. Everything sort of is clear that it's going to have a use, and the tank battles are so much fun. I love tank games, so like already sold. But the tank battles are really fun. Man, like there's still so much more. Like I'm still early on because I only started up this morning, but I've been playing for a couple hours, and just a lot of humor. I won't spoil it, but the character that joins Beelzebub on his journey is named Thief, because some of the demons have names that are very basic. Like one of them is a centaur. His name is Centaur.
I mean, keep it simple,
Right? Okay, I'll say this. So the Beelzebub teams up with a human because they think the human thinks, hey, I saw birds fly. They're water finches. Water finches eat like small fish from fresh water. But if I saw a water finch, that means there's fresh water, and it was coming from the south and heading north. So if we go south, we should be able to find water, and if we share it, we'll both survive. That's the main story of Sandland. And the character that joins is Thief, but Beelzebub needs his dad's permission, so he goes and asks Satan, and Satan's like, absolutely. And to soften or to not soften, sweeten the deal, the human has given Beelzebub a bunch of old game consoles, and before Beelzebub leaves, Satan's like, also, you can only play those consoles for an hour a day, and you have to be playing them in a fair lit room, and you can't sit too close to the television. Like, it's not taking itself too seriously, but then they'll have a moment where they are clearly referencing like cannibalism.
Oh, nice.
It's a very weird game, but like I remember reading it and liking it more because Dragon Ball Z was also in Shonen Jump, even though by that point they were printing way earlier issues just so like people could read a Shonen Jump. Like they weren't just taking Shonen Jump magazines and making them into English. They were choosing what they actually localized. And Dragon Ball Z was a big seller, as was Yu-Gi-Oh! And then Naruto became big, and so did One Piece. And Sandland was always a small one, but I always preferred it over Dragon Ball Z because the artwork I felt was way better. I mean, it was a newer comic from Akira Toriyama as well. And that's just one thing, too. I'm playing on a PS4, which is the only old console it's on. And it looks amazing. It might be the best looking game I've played on the PS4.
That art style does well across pretty much everything.
For sure, but like just there's small little details where you're walking. So the tank leaves tread marks in the dirt, and they don't look like just a PNG that they put over top. Like it looks like it actually carves into the sand. And it's only for a short distance behind. Like when you get out of the tank, you can kind of follow your tread marks back to the tank. I'm just fascinated by the whole thing because I expected another Kakarot. I expected a like 7 out of 10. It's good. It's clearly for a fan base, but I mean, Sandland doesn't have a huge fan base. They just released the anime. I would go back, Ken. If anything, like stealth gameplay that isn't bad, thank God, because that was my first fear, was going to be a shitty stealth section, because nothing beats poor stealth sections in games that aren't stealth in the first place. I honestly, the worst part is it's on foot combat, but it gets better as you unlock new skills. Like for some reason, I can't jump and dodge until I unlock it, which is a very odd thing to lock behind a skill tree. I know I'm kind of jumping all over, but the game sort of does this too. In its introduction, is to show you kind of all the aspects. But tank battles they focused on the most, and being able to zoom in with your tank and destroy an enemy tank from far away with like a good placed missile, that is a satisfaction I do not get from most video games. So yes, it's something I paid for, and I'm thoroughly getting my. I think it was only $80, so it was only $69.99 in Canada, which is kind of crazy because like all new games are $79.99.
I think it's $49 here. I think.
Okay. Give me a second. I have to look now because
if I remember correctly, I think I saw it was $50, so it's not like a full price game here.
That's insane because like. Yeah, so it's saying it's $79.99, but it didn't come to that with tax. So I don't know how I didn't pay full price, but I'm going to compare it to another game.
It says it's $59 on Steam here.
Okay, so
I thought it said $49, but I'm just there's so many games I looked at lately. I could have been looking at something else.
Didn't all your games go up in price too?
Yeah, they went up to $69.
Yeah, so like.
So I guess technically it is still a cheaper game. Yeah.
Yeah. Princess Peach Showtime.
Ugh.
Is a full fucking price game. It is $79.99 in Canada. I paid close to $100 for Princess Peach Showtime. You know what? It's not a game clearly for me. I have listened to people that have younger kids, and apparently it is like they cannot kids who cannot play like Mario without getting frustrated and stuff. Like I listened to a Stone Age Gamer podcast, which if you're interested in old video games, hey, there's a podcast you can listen to too. They're the only other podcast I've listened to that's video game related since I found this one. Now I'm on it, so I don't listen to this unless I'm not on the show.
Nobody else does either.
I don't listen to it even when I'm not on the show.
Oh well, you're missing out sometimes. You could hear Ken repeat the news 2 weeks in a row.
I never did that. That never happened.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. Anyways,
lies.
Well, 2 weeks in a row, I found out that some game sold a bunch of copies, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I heard this, and I had to check and be like, oh wait, no, this is this week's episode. Ken read it twice in a row, or he read the future the week before.
That's more logical explanation than I can read the future.
Sure. Yeah,
yeah. Princess Peach, like his young daughter, can play that game no problem. So I'm not trying to shit on Princess Peach, but like that's a game that I feel like a lot of people would have been less upset about if it sold for $50. You know, so to find out that Sandland is less expensive than all your other big titles that are coming out is kind of bonkers to me. Because so far, like the level of polish on everything is just outstanding. I know that the voice cast is also the cast from the anime, but I just want to call out the main actress who plays Beelzebub is so good. Sorry, I'm just pulling up the. Where is she? Yeah, man.
He's pulling up the do, just so you know.
Risa May, who I guess has done voices for Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact as well. Those are the two big ones that she has on her IMDb. But she's great as Beelzebub. Like, if she wasn't doing the voice, like, she's perfect for the voice I imagine for the character. But because she's the one that does most of the talking, I was really worried they were going to botch it, because that was one thing the demo didn't do, was kind of play any cutscenes. And no, like, all the cast is great, but like, she's perfect. She is like the perfect casting for that character. I can't say enough good things. Is it a perfect game? I'm sure I will hit a point where it either gets a little grindy or something, but until that time, like, I am 100% like, it is worth every penny I spent.
That's all that matters.
And that's kind of it. Like, because I was kind of going through it mentally, like, the only thing I would really play was a little bit of Glass Masquerade, our favorite.
Oh man.
I went back to 2 because there was some DLC I didn't finish, and I just kind of wiped my whole save so I could do all those puzzles again. And man, playing on hard mode, I forgot how hard that was.
Yes, especially without the locking into play stuff.
Yeah. To kind of explain to people, when you play in normal mode, all the pieces rotate into the way that they are going to fit into the puzzle. And when you switch to hard mode, they don't do that, except for like 6 pieces that go around the outside, because they always give you somewhere to start. Otherwise, the puzzles would be impossible. Really, really well done game. I still love it. Super relaxing, and that's kind of the reason why I was doing it, because like, I needed something to kind of feel better, and it's just comfort food. That's about it, though. Like, I know there's not a lot to talk about, but the two things that I have played lots of, one of them's been talked about to death, and the other one I've just started. So.
All right. Well, Jay, you're up.
All right. Obviously, I haven't been on the show for a while, so I've been playing a lot of things. But I'm not going to get into most of those things. I'll just say, I'm sure like the Helldivers is like the new Overwatch, so I won't spend too much time on. I'll just say that it's a game that I didn't know I wanted. It's a game I probably wouldn't have played if I didn't play with you guys on that first time. And I probably would have just passed it by as just another live service game, and I'm very glad that I didn't, because it just seems and feels like a very different game than is what's available right now in the market in terms of like a multiplayer game. And I've been loving it. I hit level 100 not too long ago. Just kind of get a game or two in every single day. And then some more depending on the circumstances and stuff like that. Just a really good time in terms of what you're able to do. The game doesn't hold your hand. Everything that is deadly to the enemy is even more deadly to your own team members. And all the possible consequences around the team killing and everything in between adds this layer of like tension and spatial awareness that you need to have in order to play that game at a high level, which I really, really enjoy. So I'm gonna keep playing that game until they stop releasing new content. But I'm just loving the way they're doing the new content with just kind of leaking out like little bits of information and kind of hinting towards the next thing, and allowing the community to kind of engage with the new stuff as it gets added in, instead of just kind of spelling everything out for everyone. So very much appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I was just going to say to add some context to Jay saying he just hit level 100, since Jay hasn't been on the show in a while. You have heard on the show how much Terrence and I talk about the game and how much Terrence and I have talked about playing the game. He and I are both in the 30s. So Jay is definitely the Helldivers expert out of our group at this point.
Yep, 258.4 hours played on Helldivers 2. That's the most I played in one single game. 58, yeah. 258 hours and counting. That's the most I played one single game in a very, very long time. That's like release Overwatch kind of numbers. This might become my Overwatch. You know what? Kind of like the way Ken's Overwatch is, Overwatch.
Dude, I don't want to talk about my hours in Overwatch. Okay, I just don't.
No, we're not gonna go there, Ken. I'm not gonna put you on blast or anything like that. But I have a lot of hours in this game, and when you start playing on Helldiver difficulty exclusively, you level up so fast in that game. It's not even funny. So I expect to head 150 in the next month or something like that. Probably won't even take me that long.
Oh, I expected there to be a cap on that.
There was a cap of level. Was it 50, Ryan, initially?
It was 50 to start. Yeah, now it's 150.
Yeah. 150. Yeah, and then they're probably going to increase that cap even more or introduce some kind of prestige situation, which I would also love to. Yeah, that'd be great. But yeah, that's Helldivers. I'm not going to spend more time on that. I'll talk about it during the next GOTY discussion. That's the next time I'm going to talk about it. Yeah. I've also been playing the new game called Saga Emerald Beyond. Any of you guys heard about that game yet?
I'm assuming that's a Saga-related game.
Saga Frontier game.
Yeah, I have not played it or really seen anything about it.
I've not seen anything about it.
There, I'll put it in the chat just so you could marvel at it.
Jesus Christ. Do we tell the number to the listeners? Do you want your shame? Do you want your shame to not be available to the world?
I mean, this whole podcast is a shame. It's 192 days, 11 hours, and 14 minutes.
That's over 4,600 hours.
I know. It's 8 years, man.
Is that even the correct time, or is that
That is
from your Xbox?
That's how long the app has run on my Xbox. Now, granted, that's not every play, not every game, but yeah, that's how long the app has run on my Xbox.
And is that? I'm trying to think. Is that just as Overwatch 2, or did it update?
No. That's all 8 years. That's both.
Okay.
It was the same app when they updated it.
Okay, I didn't know that because I only played from Overwatch 2, so the app was brand new to me.
Yep.
Yeah, every time I'm about to go to sleep or something like that, it's 1:30 a.m. or something like that. I see Ken status playing Overwatch. It's yep.
Dude,
it's just be that way.
They've started taunting me now. They send me a weekly recap every week of here's your stats for the week, how many hours you played, how many matches you played.
Do you need help?
Yeah, they send a hotline, a crisis hotline in the email.
Mm-hmm. Just that gif of Jordan saying, "Get some help."
Yeah.
Stop it.
Stop it. I can't stop. I won't stop.
Oh,
I know, but the difference between you and me, Ken, I actively love and like Helldivers too. But you hate Overwatch 2 and you still play it, so
it's a love-hate relationship. It's an abusive relationship, Jay. I can't help it.
It is. I hear you. But going back to Saga Emerald Beyond is that if you ever played a Saga Frontier game, those games are very weird games. They don't like to follow the traditional rules of JRPGs that are established, the way that you level up, the way that the story is told, the way that the characters are. Generally, you play JRPG, you're gonna be playing as a teenager. Eventually, you fight God and you kill him. That's kind of like a JRPG 101. But in Saga Frontier, you're playing as a robot from the future. Sometimes you're playing as a 74-year-old man, and there's all sorts of random crazy stuff going on. And this game is no different in that regard. But one thing that Saga Frontier has always had, well, actually, let me say two things, is incredible fight music. The game OSTs for Saga Frontier games have always been fantastic. I still have some of their old games on my playlist still. So this game also has a really cool soundtrack when you're fighting. It really gets you into the mood, and a really interesting and intricate combat system where you're kind of all taking place in this battlefield, and you are lined together on this a progress bar where the person on the left side is going to be acting first, person on the right side is going to be acting last. So you have all the icons representing your characters and your enemies on that line. You can do a lot of different actions to manipulate that line, where you either move yourself, manipulate the enemies to delay their turn, or even just kind of stun them outright, and kind of keeping them together in a way where you can chain was it multiple characters to be in line with each other. You connect them together for this unite attacks. Which can trigger very powerful series of attacks where like 5 of your characters are attacking at the same time, and they trigger an additional attack because they were able to get their combo meter so high. And all of this stuff is happening at all times. The enemies can do the exact same thing if they're all bunched up together in the progress bar, so you really need to be mindful of trying to break apart enemies. You have interrupt attacks that stop attacks from enemies from triggering in certain situations. You have things that allow you to kind of cast magic, but it takes a full turn for it to charge up, so you kind of get your attack the next turn, but it's very powerful. So you have to try to keep that character protective so they don't get interrupted. So combat is very, very interesting. It's actually one of the most interesting combat I've seen in a JRPG in a while. So just by that aspect, I'm loving the game. But boy, is this one of the lowest budget RPG games I've ever played in my life.
Okay, so that explains the art style.
Yes. I'm sure you're googling some images.
I'm on the
Oh
Steam
my God.
page. I'm on the Steam page, and like the combat is exactly what I kind of expected because Final Fantasy Legend was the same series. All the weird saga spin-offs, romancing saga and all that. So I'm like, okay, the battle system looks cool, whatever. And then there's like one of the characters standing in like a 3D white space that looks like it's straight out of Nier. And I'm like, okay, interesting. And then there's the robot character, and he seems to be walking a very linear path and floating in space. And then it's like, okay, I see a character walking through what looks like a town, and all the buildings are flat 2D images. But not in like a really nice like Octopath Traveler way, but like we have $17 and a stick of gum. You need to figure out how to make this game work.
That's exactly the feeling that I get when I play this game. So voice acting is very sparse, and what is there isn't very good, let's say. And the thing about it is that like the character model and the way the characters tell the story, they're all told in still. Like nothing animates in this game outside of combat. Everything is still photos that transition into another still photo. It feels like they went to like Blender, they downloaded or bought a couple of assets and decided to start animating things around and taking screenshots for how to make their cutscenes and stuff like that. And if they told me that this game's full budget from creation was like $100,000, I'd be like, that much? You know, it feels like a lot. So even in that, it's kind of still charming because it's so low budget that you can't help but appreciate the fact that it was even created in the first place. So the game's core and guts when it comes to like the combat and everything is so good, but all the other aspects in terms of like the character, the story, the presentation, all feels kind of rubbish in a lot of ways. But I would say, if nothing else, the story is interesting because you can choose to play as a bunch of different characters and you have whole different games basically based on their own adventure. And each one is like maybe like 6-8 hours of adventure. And then it eventually kind of comes together in a way, or that's what I've heard because I'm only in like the first character's story, and maybe like 5-6 hours in or something like that. So not a lot to go on, at least from that experience, but that's what I've heard. So just the combat and the music is keeping me going, and I'm kind of curious as to how they're going to tie together all these character stories together. So if you ever played a Saga Frontier game, or if you're the type of person that say, oh, these games are all samey these days, they're all play the same, they're all like the same kind of things and everything, and you want to try something different, something more experimental, then I would say give Saga Emerald Beyond a shot. And like people were talking about, like you guys were talking about with price, this game is a $50 game, you know, so it's not a $60, it's not a $70 game. They know the amount of money they spent on this game, and for that, I think you're gonna get your good money's worth in that regard. So give that a shot. I also booted up Eiyuden Chronicles 100 Heroes, but I didn't put enough time into it for me to really say anything. But I'm excited to play more. It definitely has the Suikoden spiritual successor feeling going on for sure. And I know a lot of reviewers were talking about how it feels a little too dated given its release date, but I think that's kind of the artistic design and gameplay design that they were going with. They just wanted to make, what if there was a Suikoden like 6 that was never made or something like that, that was in like
God,
2D or
did they
something
make
like
it
that.
to? Did they make it to 6? What?
They made it to 5.
Holy shit! I only remember 3 or 4.
Yeah. A 4 was the one where you're on a ship a lot, and that wasn't very well received. But Suikoden 5 was excellent. One of the best RPGs on the PS2 in my book.
Okay, so it was. Yeah, I was gonna ask. It was PS2, I guess. Huh.
Yeah,
Crazy.
PS2. Yeah. I know. They made some DS and stuff like that before, but I didn't really pay attention to those.
Well, those are all so I had to look it up because that was my response. Ken was like, I never played the Suikoden games, but I was like, I thought it was only 4, and then like lo and behold, 5.
Wow.
Yeah, 5 is actually one of my favorites of the whole series. Yeah, but a little less known.
There was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spin-offs. Suiko Gaiden, which is a pretty good name. Card Stories, these are all Japanese. Tactics, which was I don't even know if it was actually Suikoden in Japan because it was called Rhapsodia there. And then it was Tierkris is the DS game.
Yeah.
So I have to ask, you pronounce it like I've heard people pronounce it 2 different ways: Suikoden and Suikoden.
Are you talking to me?
Anybody? Like what?
Okay,
which...
so I'm gonna tell you right now. I don't fucking know because I don't have.
I've always said Suikoden, but that's just the way that I've always heard it in my head.
I felt like I had one of those actually guys tell me it was Suikoden once, and I was like, okay.
It could very well be, but the way I handle pronunciations of that kind is like, if I say it and you know what game I'm talking about, it's enough.
Exactly. But then again, I get 12 kinds of shit about saying Chocobo or Chocobo or whichever. So
Wait, did people say something different than Chocobo?
What was it?
I've heard Chocobo.
Chocobo.
That sounds wrong, but okay.
I think the problem with all these is that like, because I don't know Suikoden at all. I don't know if it had voice acting, but like all the Final Fantasy stuff didn't. So there's no proper way, and then establishing it years later. This is how it was pronounced. Like that, a little late there.
Yeah. I don't think a character from Suikoden ever says Suikoden.
I mean, that's fair.
It's not a thing that happens.
Suikoden.
Yeah.
It'd be like that moment in the movie when they say the name of the movie, like, oh, he said it. He said
the thing. Yeah, he said it. Yeah. No, that never happened in any of the Suikoden games that I played that I can remember. So, yeah, that's not.
Maybe they say it in
I'm
this
excited
game.
to play more.
Maybe they say it in Eiyuden Chronicles. They'll use it in a.
It'd be really, really funny if they did. But I have not heard a line of dialogue from that game yet. So,
okay,
well, actually, no. Actually, at the beginning they do talk, and then they kind of go back to text and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm excited to play more of that.
What those games are based off of? I didn't realize they were based off of Water Margin.
I don't know what Water Margin is.
Water Margin is a like one of the earliest Chinese novels, as it said. I've looked it up before because it's almost like mythological stories. There's a bunch. It's a bunch of. Think of 1001 Arabian Nights. It's sort of like that, but it's Chinese.
Do all the games keep that 100 heroes thing?
108 heroes.
180.
Yeah.
Okay, so they all stick to that then.
On the 100, I'm sorry, 108, not 180. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I was curious if they all stuck to that because that was like the gimmick of the original games.
It was.
And here I'm looking at Water Margin now. The opening episode in the novel is the release of 108 spirits imprisoned under an ancient.
There you go.
Yeah.
Bearing tortoise, because I don't know what.
I'm not sure if you guys know, but China has been around for a very long time. And
what? I thought that was something new.
Things.
I thought that was just like from TikTok or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Everything came from TikTok, didn't you know?
Have any of you watched the grilling of that poor man?
Yes.
Where they just keep referencing that he's Chinese and he's not.
Right. Yeah, and he keeps telling them over and over again, "I'm not Chinese."
Yes.
Yeah.
Who are we talking about?
The CEO of TikTok.
Oh.
He was
Singaporean
in front of Congress.
Gotcha. Well, TikTok's about to get banned from US since they're not selling, so good times ahead for everyone involved in that.
Yeah, I'm glad we're focusing on the important issues.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But it is an important issue for kids, I guess, and people that use TikTok as a platform. So I guess we'll see the fallout from that, and however that goes.
I'm not trying to put out like weird conspiracy theories, but isn't it weird that like the only one that they don't have any control over, they want to ban, guys? Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? But
Nah,
why
that's
would
not
we want to
weird.
do information control? That's not. But guys, come on, we're just the U.S. government. We've never spied on our own citizens. What are you talking about?
The government has never lied to its citizens once. There's no historical proof of it ever happening. But yeah. Going back to game though, the game that I came on to talk about, not just because of the game is new and I reviewed it, is Stellar Blaze. So Ken, how do you want to do this? Do you want to do this in terms of like save the whole nonsense shit with the stuff going on
I
in
think
the
we should
part of
save that for
stories?
the
Yeah,
news.
save the
Yeah?
nonsense. Let's talk about
Okay,
the
so I'll
game.
talk about the-
I've
I'll talk
actually
about
been
the game,
playing
okay.
it. Yeah, I've been playing it too. I'm about 6 hours in. So
Gotcha. Well, I played it, I reviewed it, in full. I beat the game in normal mode, and I got about like 7-8 hours into hard mode with New Game Plus, which I thought was a pretty nice addition after the game was ended, where I could just carry over all my items, upgrades, and stuff like that. And they add actually new skills, new equipment that are higher like level variety for you to find. So it's actually worthwhile. The hard mode is more interesting because you take a lot more shield damage from everything, and things live long enough for you to actually do your cooler combos on and stuff like that. So I've been having a good time with hard mode. But just to speak about the game itself, I think it's Shift Up's first game, and Shift Up is known best for their mobile games. One of which is very popular, and this is how they advertise it themselves: the one-handed shooting game.
oh
So
Christ.
exactly. So when I was told that the company that only has experience in making those kind of games on mobile devices, were going to make a triple A console game on an action adventure game, I was gonna say, like, how are they even gonna pull this up? They have no experience, they have no pedigree in this kind of a gameplay or scope, and they just did it. Yeah, I don't know how they did it, but there's so much polish in the game in terms of how tight the combat feels, how the world is fun to explore. There's so many treasures and secrets hiding in every corner, so it feels very rewarding to like kind of go off to the less travel path and find secrets and upgrades and stuff like that. There's tons of unlockables, new skills that gets unlocked over time to make the combat feel even better and more interesting as it goes. Because you only start out with like maybe like two beta skills, but then on top of that you get these brand new burst skills, which there are 4 of as well, and then you unlock like a devil may trigger kind of deal where you kind of go into like a super mode. You become invincible and very powerful for a time. So there's a lot of mechanics that gets added in over time, and the basic fundamentals of the game of like perfect dodging and perfect parrying being very important feels really good. Like when you do pull off a perfect parry, it makes like a loud like clang kind of noise. It like stops briefly. There's like a burst of sparks and everything. It's one of the most satisfying perfect parries I played in like a video game, and that's saying a lot because I played a lot of these kind of games. So and it's just really interesting in terms of like the enemies that you fight, like the bosses especially. They have like special moves that you have to, sometimes you can't block, so you have to dodge it, but you have to dodge it in a specific way where you'll kind of flank behind them and continue your onslaught. There is like a retribution thing where you perfect parry the enemy enough times or you land enough burst hits, they kind of go into a stagger phase where you can do this like devastating attack, which has really unique cutscenes associated with them and stuff like that. The music and the atmosphere is also top notch as well. I think the music for this game really took me off guard. I will definitely be picking up the OST for this game when it comes out, because there are some like songs in this game like where you're either just exploring, it can change into this dynamic thing where you're underwater. It kind of gets like tuned out, like you're kind of hearing music while you're submerged in water. If you kind of get into a fight while you're listening to that music or the music is going, it like starts ramping up and starts adding bass and kind of organically elevates the tension of the scenario and stuff like that. The environments also look really good in this kind of apocalyptic dystopian world and everything. And I'm personally not a fan of the character models in this game specifically. Not so much of how they are too revealing or anything. That doesn't bother me at all. More so in the like they are like dab smack in the middle of that like uncanny. They look like dolls and not like humans kind of deal. And I'm not particularly fond of that. I kind of got over it and I didn't really pay attention to it after a certain point. But it's not an art style that I personally like. So that's the one. That's the part that I didn't like. The one part that I really, really didn't like was the fact that you had to do some platforming from time to time, where you have to jump on top of like different types of platforms, kind of jump to specific locations, or if you fall, you take a lot of damage. You got to start over and stuff like that. And the game just isn't built for that. The game's built for combat. Kind of moving swiftly around while you're grounded, jumping around and stuff like that, and trying to climb over things of that nature doesn't really work as well as you would hope. And there are certain sections that really need you to go through that, which I didn't enjoy. There's also another section where it's like you're trying to hide from these turrets that are firing at you, and the hitboxes are all wacky, and they're like hitting you through like cars and stuff like that. It feels really cheap. But these are very small portions of the game compared to the larger whole, where you're doing all these other things like combat, exploration, and upgrading your character, which are all fun. And eventually, you find yourself in the last bastion of humankind called Zion. I guess it's the game really takes its story quite literally in a lot of ways. There's a character named Eve. There's a character named Adam. And there's a human town called Zion. The inspirations and the things that they pick up are a little too
On the nose.
Yeah.
too on the nose, too obvious kind of deal. I would say though, even though the story and characters didn't draw me in as much as I would like, at the very end of the game there is a choice to be made, which will determine kind of the ultimate end of the game in terms of the story and the final boss that you fight. It gave me pause to think about. Like, I didn't make a choice immediately, and that kind of reflected well on the game, that I had to think and kind of contemplate the morality and the pros and cons of the choices that I was making. If I didn't like the character, if I didn't like the world and the story as a whole, I don't think I would have had that pause where I had to seriously think about it. So at the end, I think I was sold, but it took a very, very, very long time to kind of get there because everything kind of felt much more generic and less inspired than other games of the same kind of sci-fi vein. But yeah, I really enjoyed it, and for a first-time effort for a brand new IP for a company that wasn't tested before, I think this is a incredible first star. Like, I was impressed that they were able to pull it off. But again, I know you've been playing it and you have very different opinion about the game than myself. So why don't you take it away?
Well, I don't know that I have a hugely different opinion. I'm enjoying what I'm playing of it so far. The biggest issues that I run into is, and yes, I want to talk about those turrets because what the fuck.
I know, I hate those things.
The first time I came across one, I was like, okay, so like I can probably just run or dodge or something, and like it literally is like a homing missile, and I'm just like, what the fuck? And it's like a one shot. It's crazy. But the combat itself, I think what throws me off the most is I'm used to games like Ninja Gaiden, Devil May Cry, things like that, where I've always got my finger on the block button because there's so many attacks coming from different angles, and I like to keep the block button. Well, if you hold the block button down in this, and like when you have an opportunity to do a perfect dodge, sometimes like holding the block button is how you activate your beta moves. So like a lot of times instead of doing the perfect dodge, I still have my finger on the block button, so I'm doing one of my beta moves, which
yes,
like having to train my brain to not do that has been very hard because I'm used to Ninja Gaiden where it's like you got the block button held constantly. Also, you are very correct when we were talking about this game early on that when you start, this game does not feel as good as it does once you unlock the timing for the perfect parry. Like these are skills, which is weird. Like, why do I have to upgrade a skill to have a better timing window? Like that's just, I don't know. And then
it's poor game design on my part because they put their worst foot forward with the game. Like people are gonna play the demo and feel like the game sucks because their pairing and perfect window is so short without these upgrades. And that's just, I don't know. I don't think they should have done that. That should just be native. That should just be how flexible the timing should have been to begin with, and that skill point should have been used for something else, something like an enhancement.
Yeah.
The way Nier Automata did it was pretty smart, where you can dodge just fine. It's not the same, but the dodge was just fine. But then there was the chip you could add, which would basically give you the witch time dodge.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you dodged at the right time, it would slow everything down, so you could do extra damage. Like that's the way you do it if you want to give a bonus that you can work towards.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. And I think that's another mistake people make, myself included, coming into this game. This is not Devil May Cry.
Oh, no.
This is not Nier. This combat is, for lack of a better word, it feels like it's in the middle of a Souls game and an action game.
I believe the way that I described it was that it's measured but fast-paced.
Yes.
Meaning you have to time your attacks in a way where you have to time your button press. You can't just mash things and then make things go. There are a lot of different combinations of things, but at the same time, the attacks themselves come out very quickly, and you can switch between attacks quickly, but it's not instantaneous like Ninja Gaiden or Nier.
Yeah, and also you have to understand that the enemy attacks. So I watched a video that really explained this very well for me. That when you're in an attack, you can cancel as long as the attack could not do damage. Which means, like, if you start an attack and the enemy goes to attack you, it can interrupt your attack. And you can only block or parry if your attack is not at the point in the animation where it would initially do damage. So you have to learn the timing of how your attacks work against the enemies and how the how the enemy's attacks work against you. And there's a reason why every enemy in the game goes into the, what kind of enemy it is, because they all have specific style of attacks. And it's a lot of memorization and learning how the enemies attack. Like some of the enemies will just straight up do a 3-hit combo. Some of them will add a 4th move. Some of them will, like, you run into these robots in the wasteland that'll eventually, like, shoot these things at you that are, like, non-stop and you can't get out of the attack. Or they'll shoot something in the air that lands on the ground. Like, it's really knowing which enemy you're going up against. And the only time the combat really made me feel like it was not about my skill, but about being kind of cheap, is when you get 3 or 4 enemies around you. Only the enemy that you're locked onto, half the time will you be able to block. Like, so if somebody hits you from behind and you're locked onto the enemy in the front, you'll still take that hit from behind, which makes sense when you think about it logically, but as a video game, it can be very frustrating.
Very, very. That's why I abused that one special beta move. That's that wide sweeping attack that you can, like, do twice in a row.
Oh yeah,
and that usually clears it up. But I agree. This game is best played when you're one-on-one against things. Your main priority when you're fighting multiple things is to kill the other enemies, so you can save the big bad for one-on-one fight. And that's kind of the way that it works.
Yeah, that is absolutely the way that it works. And I've leaned towards building a very much beta heavy build.
Oh yeah.
Because the beta attacks are so strong. They can also stagger the enemies. But you're right, when you pull off that combo, that perfect parry, like when I first reached, not to do any spoilers, but there's this door that you get to where the person standing at the door is like, I will let you in if you prove yourself.
Yes,
like,
that's a good one.
I beat them without taking a hit, and it felt super really good. Like,
yeah, so satisfying because you get that retribution attack at the end as well for your reward for being so good at parrying too. So It makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, the game is really good. I did find myself, like, really digging through the entire first open area, because it's weird. Like, the first part of the game, like the first couple hours, is like a very linear style of game. And then all of a sudden you're thrown into this big open world that's basically like, go wherever you want, find all the shit. So, I like it. I also have problems with the character, because, like, especially with people seeing online, like, this is what a real woman looks like. No, that's what a doll looks like.
Yeah, I haven't even played the game, but just the videos I've seen from it, they don't look realistic at all.
No, that is not what real people look like.
We'll talk about this in the news, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. But yeah, I am also very impressed at how well it runs and how little issues I have with it. Like, this game is nearly flawless when it comes to, like, performance and glitches. Like, there's nothing happening in this game. No bad stuff at all.
Yeah, it's shocking because we always kind of have this assumption nowadays when even the biggest companies, actually, I guess especially the biggest companies, like when they release a video game, like Jedi Survivor and all these other games that come out, run like absolute dog shit for like a full month until they have to start patching things in. So it is very possible for you to release a game and it to be performing very well from the get-go on your launch patch. It's just they just don't take the time and effort to polish it up, you know?
Yeah.
And
And this game
yeah,
looks good and runs at like there's 3 different modes. I'm playing on the balance mode. So it's still 60, but like it looks a little better. It's like 1440p or something like that, and
mhm.
I haven't had any issues with it at all. Like it runs beautifully and it looks great. It's a good game, but it definitely takes a little while to get used to what it is because people trying to play it like a Souls game, it ain't gonna work. If you try to play it like a Devil May Cry, it ain't gonna work. So
Yeah, it's like its own thing, you know. It's a brand new IP, so it has every reason to be its own thing. So if you understand that fact, then you have a good time with it. Especially once you upgrade your parrying and the dodge as your like the first 2 things that you do. You're gonna have a good time, perfect parrying and perfect dodging everything.
yeah, it's a good game.
Yeah, but yeah, that's it. I'll save the rest of the stuff for when we're talking about the use.
All right. Well, I don't have a ton to talk about. I did try a few things that I wanted to talk about. I'm sad Terrence isn't here so we could talk about the crab game together because I want to talk about that game. That game is interesting.
You can talk about it by yourself.
I'm going to. Don't
Okay.
you worry. Actually, I think that might be where I start. So I checked out Another Crab's Treasure, which on the surface it would be like, I don't want to talk about this game. I don't want to play this game because it's a Souls game. But it's on Game Pass, so I was like, you know what? I'll give it a shot. It looks very like comical and cute. I was like, maybe it'll be okay. It won't frustrate me too bad. It's good to know that if you are frustrated with Souls games, this one has a lot of accessibility options, including like setting how much damage you take, how much damage the enemies deliver, how much damage they take, and there's even an option to give the crab a gun, which is absolutely bananas because so the way this game works is it is a Souls game and your armor is going to be your shell because the beginning of the game starts with the crab living in a shell and this fucking shark head on a stick comes and tells you, and he's called the Lone Shark, by the way, which is hilarious.
That's pretty good.
He pops up out of the water. He tells you have to pay your taxes. You say, I don't have the money to pay the taxes, so he takes your shell, which is essentially your home, and then you set out on a quest to get your home back. So you can use items in the ocean as what they call shells, which is your armor. And you start off with like putting pop cans or banana peels on your back as your armor, and these all have different stats. So like they have a different amount of shield, they have a different amount of like stamina and things like that. But if you put the gun on, which is in the accessibility options, it one shots everything. So like you can just kill everything in one shot. But it also counts as your shell, and it takes up like half the screen. So like it's just a huge fucking like Magnum handgun. It's hilarious.
So it's an actual size gun on a small little horseshoe crab
on a horseshoe crab, 100%.
or whatever they're called.
Does it give you blowback like squirrel with a gun?
No, it just fires and like I tested it. You can literally one shot a boss. So like when a boss comes out, you can just shoot him once and he falls over.
Hermit crab, not horseshoe crab.
Yeah, sorry, hermit crab.
Yeah.
But if you play it normally, it is a standard kind of Souls game. You've got your normal attacks, you got your stamina bar. I feel like the combat is a little. I don't want to say bad. I want to say like not as refined as a normal Souls game. Like it feels very plasticky, very kind of, I don't know, synthetic. It doesn't feel good to hit other enemies, and like some of the enemies are a little squirmy. Like they don't. I don't know. Also, when you lock onto an enemy, it does the Zelda thing where the screen goes into like super squish 16:9, where it puts black bars on the top and the bottom. It's a fun game. One of the first things you get in the game, which is a little weird, is like a grappling hook, and you can use it to grapple onto points and do some platforming and stuff. It's an interesting game that I'm having fun with, but I think what keeps it going is like the characters and the story, because it's so ridiculous.
Does the humor kind of like keep up after that opening point? There's like more characters and stuff like that you run into?
Yeah. Especially like when you get to the queen at the at the castle, and she talks about herself in the third person. Like it's all whimsical and funny, and I really like the main character. Like he's super cool. I think that's what's going to carry this game for me, because I think the combat, like, I see what they want to do. They want to make a Souls game, and it's kind of a Souls game. It just feels like, what if we had Souls at home kind of controls? Like, it's not as deep and methodical as a Souls game. So I don't know why they went for that, but I guess it works. I don't remember. Did I talk about Turtles last week?
No, you couldn't.
Yeah, it's not very good. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. So, it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Wrath of the Mutants, which was originally released in 2017 as an arcade game, made by Raw Thrills, which I assumed that would have meant it was awesome, because it was the guys that did Cruisin' Blast. It feels like it wants to be Turtles in Time. It just doesn't have the chops to be Turtles in Time. They did add new bosses and new levels for this version of the game, which is nice. They are actually pretty fun. But the combat just feels kind of bland, and then the fact that it's only local multiplayer really kind of drags it down, because this is the kind of game that would be a lot more fun with your friends, but who in the hell is going to have 4 people over with 4 controllers in the year of our Lord 2024? Especially to play Ninja Turtles: Wrath of the Mutants. Like, it just ain't
I'm
gonna
looking
happen.
at some screenshots of the game. It gives me more Turtles in Time Reshell vibe. You know that bad remake that they made?
Because they're
kind
using
of what it looks like. Yeah.
Because they're using the design of the new show instead of the well, not new. I don't want to say new. It was out in like what, 2012 or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
I don't remember.
They did bring back all the voice actors, which makes that part really nice. So like the dialogue and stuff is really good, but man, you can beat it in less than an hour, and I really found no reason to go back and play it again.
Wow, less than an hour? Even for a beat 'em up, that's really short.
And that's with added like 3 or 4 extra stages and bosses from the arcade version.
How much are they charging for this game?
It's $30.
Oof.
Yeah. So I can't say that I was a huge fan of this game. As Ryan has pinged me 45 times in Discord, Wrath Aeon of Ruin finally came to consoles. I don't think I like it.
Make sure.
I don't think I like it. So it is a boomer shooter, but let me tell you why I don't think I like it. So you ever play a 3D game and then you give yourself a free camera and you can fly around the world, like how it has that kind of floaty, tilty kind of feel? That's exactly what this feels like when you're playing it.
Oh yeah, that's not good.
And I don't really care for that kind of locomotion. Also, the game starts off doing melee combat, and melee combat is fine if it works, but I feel like there's no way to attack an enemy without taking a hit, which really makes it kind of not very fun, because when you get hit in this game, it completely blankets the screen with red, so you can't see anything. And if you can imagine, and they send like big swarms of enemies at you, so you're getting hit like every 2 or 3 seconds. So the screen is constantly flashing this big red on the screen. I don't know. I wasn't jiving with it. I did not think it was wonderful. But I'll play a little bit more because I got to review it. But so far, I'm not a big fan. And then I don't know if you know this.
By the way,
go ahead.
I just want to say, Raw Thrills. I think we're also behind that awful Injustice arcade port.
Oh, the one that was based off the mobile game?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that game was bad.
So they do some shit work too.
It's made up for the guys that were in the Midway arcade. Like Jarvis is still there, isn't he? I think he's still at Raw Thrills.
I think it's his. I think it's his company.
Yeah, I don't know if he still
it's
works.
Just they do some bad stuff. Is all I'm saying.
Okay, well that makes sense because this game was Don't spend $30 on this Ninja Turtles game. I'm just gonna tell you that. And then I played a shitload of Overwatch because that's what I do. So anyway, let's talk about what's coming out this week. Xbox Series X, PlayStation 5. When does this end? Oh god, we're in May already. Holy shit. Front Mission 2 remake. Tales from Candleforth. The Fall of Elena Temple. Space Mercenary Defense Force. Armed and Gelatinous, the Couch Edition. Candle Knight. Full Metal Sergeant. MotoGP 24. I can't believe they still make MotoGP games. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Pac-Man Mega Tunnel Battle Chomp Champs, which I think is it was like was it Apple or Stadia exclusive or something like that?
Yeah, I thought it was.
No, this is the Stadia one. This is the one that's got like 50 people or whatever.
Okay, this is coming to everything else finally this week. It's like those 3 Stadia exclusives are finally no longer Stadia exclusives. Pool Slide Story, Splash, The Mongo Works, Cyber Citizen Shockman 3, The Princess from Another World, and House Flipper 2. In case you didn't flip enough houses before, now you can flip some more. PlayStation 5 is the same. We got Happy Funland, Gordian Quest. Oh! In case you haven't played it yet, Sea of Thieves is out this week on PlayStation 5. I also hear it runs better.
True.
Oh, shit.
My grandpa works at Sony, he told me.
Who's Your Daddy?
I know my grandpa is the one that works at Sony, not my daddy.
Yeah. A Tale of Paper Refolded and Save Me Mr. Taco Definitive Edition.
Oh, I've been waiting on the definitive edition of Save Me, Mr. Taco.
So I can explain that because it does sound kind of like shitty. But what happened was Save Me, Mr. Taco was released, and the publisher was like, because he wanted it to be some sort of RPG game. I think like it's a very odd own game, and they were like, no, you have to make it something else entirely. So he did, and hated it, and then got the rights back and made it the game he wanted to make and got better reviews. A very weird case of an independent game getting published by a publisher and the publisher making it something it wasn't.
Interesting.
All right, it's time for the Nintendo Switch lineup, which I know you're all excited for. It's actually starting off with a kick-ass game that is out right now as of this recording, which is El Shaddai Ascension of the Metatron HD Remaster.
Oh, yeah.
I talked about that last week. I don't know if I'd call it an HD remaster because I ran it side by side with the Xbox 360 version, and kind of the same game. Just gonna say.
Is it only available for Switch, or did they also release it for modern and PC now?
Switch and PC is it? It's not on PlayStation or Xbox.
Okay.
Which is weird, but whatever.
Yeah.
Before the Green Moon. Braid Anniversary Edition, is that out this week? I didn't think that was out this week. I thought it got delayed. Anyway. Space Routine. What else we got here? Endless Ocean Luminous. Yeah. It's not Warhammer Space Routine, though. You know?
Yeah, no.
Freddy the Fish 2, The Case of the Haunted Schoolhouse, and Freddy the Fish 5, The Case of the Creature of Coral Cove. Hentai Tales Volume 3, so you can finish your trilogy.
Oh, excellent! That was the cliffhanger in Part 2 was incredible. You know, I've been dying and counting the days.
Ninja Flip, Slot and Learn Kanji. Swan, the Toy Wonderland. Okay. Surmount Little Climbers on a Big Adventure. Swipe right or left, geography binary quiz.
Okay.
Toho Mistia's Izakaya? Train your brain, spot the difference with dog photos. Triggerheart Excelica, all noobs must die, craft survival mine.
I'm just picturing it shows you do two different pictures of dogs. It's like, yeah, those are different dogs, all right.
All right, my brain is now trained. We're good to go.
Or it shows you a picture of a dog and a picture of a parrot. Yes, those are different. One of those is definitely a dog.
My horse stories. Yeah, I'm afraid to look that one up. I'm not gonna look that up. And then Outbreak the Fedora Files. What Lydia knows.
I think that's the Stellar Blade controversy, isn't it? The Fedora Files. I couldn't resist.
Holy shit. Oh, all right. Let's talk about some news. Do you just want to get that out of the way? Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, let's just fucking
Let's
do
get
it.
it out of the way.
Yeah.
So,
Just want.
Anthony, you felt like you were about to say something.
I have a Reddit post that I kind of need to read, but I don't know if it's the best way to start off the story.
Well, why don't I break out like the current situation as the best I can understand it, or best that I've understood it in the last like couple of days or something like that. So Stellar Blade, the video game they were talking about before, a good game. You could even call it great, depending on like whether or not you like that type of game. Was getting a lot of backlash based on a discovery that the physical version of the game that was originally shipped, basically the 1.0, the gold version, had there were outfits that were more revealing, that became more modest in the launch version. So the review and the launch version that has the original patch on, it has all the censored quote unquote models of the outfits, and there's also less gore and stuff like that that's reflected on Eve when she is unleashing a metric ton of blood as she's killing enemies and stuff like that. So there were some cutscenes and stuff like that were shown, and the big issue is things of that nature change all the time, but the Stellar Blade Twitter said that they were uncensored versions for all regions. And people are saying, like, because they said that, and because there is evidence between the gold version and the version that was released, showing that it was censored in certain areas and stuff like that, they're not being they're being disingenuous and false marketing kind of deal. And they're kind of going forward with that. And so one side you have people saying that the Stellar Blade devs misled them, saying that it was uncensored, even though it was, and they want things to go back to how the 1.0 gold version was. But Stellar Blade developer came out and said, like, yes, there were changes made, but the version that you're seeing on release is the version that they wanted to show everyone. It wasn't censored or anything like that for any particular reason outside of their own artistic vision for what that is, what that is saying. And Sony obviously hasn't chimed in, so there is a lot of people talking about, like, oh, is this Sony's fault? Is this the developer's fault? And they just don't know what it is in terms of what's going on. So there has been like petitions and stuff talking about trying to get the roll back, and it's a whole mess in terms of what they're trying to accomplish here. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and as much as I know that the complaints are dumb, like, it wouldn't be the first time Sony has censored stuff, because I recall DMC5 having a really weird censorship.
It was the bright light over the butt crack,
which to me brought my attention to it more than anything.
Yeah, I wouldn't have noticed it had I just played it.
You need to look at the butt crack.
Like, just
I love Wombat's reactions to this whole fucking thing.
I mean, what's the term you use? Loser behavior?
Hashtag loser behavior.
There has definitely been. So I'm not gonna listen. People can like what they like. Like, that's cool. People can be into what they're into. But there has been, I will say, definitively some loser behavior associated with this entire controversy.
Oh my god.
including an ex-developer.
Who's been making a game
Could you elaborate on an example of loser behavior, Ryan, for the listeners?
An example of loser behavior.
Hold on, I got one for you guys.
Okay, go ahead, Anthony. Read
Perfect
your
time
example.
for the Reddit post. My girlfriend does not like Stellar Blade. I damn near gotta play in private, dog. Ugh. Why do you have to dress her like that? This is concerning. Yada yada. How do I tell her that what me and Eve got going on has nothing to do with her? LMAO.
Whoa.
And then, hold on, the comments are, I mean, you've seen the bakery goods on Eve. Of course your girl gonna get competitive.
What is happening right now?
Okay. So yeah,
No
that's
offense, bro, but that's some next level insecurity coming from her. It's just a game. Like,
no,
it's not the game she is upset about. It is your behavior around the game. Idiot.
Yeah. So the example of loser behavior that I was going to give is the dude that decided it would be a great idea to videotape himself sweating while watching her go up and down a rope, and and like making her go up and down the rope multiple times. It's like, my man, you can find that stuff pretty much anywhere you want to look. Like,
online,
you don't
for
have
free.
to.
Of
You
real
don't have to
people.
spend $70 on this game and make her go up and down a rope.
Of real people, not dolls.
Right. Yeah, and also I think I don't know. So I understand. There's a broader conversation about whether or not censorship is something that should exist, should not exist, when should it exist, what's appropriate to be excluded and what's not appropriate to be excluded. Are there age ranges and stuff like that on stuff? Is there religious imagery that's excluded or included depending on the region that it's in? There's definitely a conversation to be had about censorship and its appropriateness. I'm generally speaking of the opinion that if you're buying an M-rated game that's already, rated for 18 plus, there's no reason to censor any of it. Mm-hmm. That said, I also think it's super silly and weird and not at all cool for the giant censorship conversation about this game to basically be about like 2 inches of pubic bone and like an inch and a half of cleavage. And like tights under a skirt.
The funny thing about the one that they fixated on, the bunny, holiday bunny costume, right, is that there are ones that are way more revealing than that, even uncensored.
The entire game is like there are multiple outfits I have seen in that game. I haven't played it, but seen people put screenshots or whatever up, where it's like, if I wasn't looking close, I would think she was just fully nude.
Yeah, there's a skin suit.
Like, yeah, and so it's like in a game that has that's a mature rated game. Why is this the censorship sparking conversation? And I know the answer to it, and it's not a good answer, right? There's a reason that this whole brigade that is sort of cashing themselves as an anti-censorship brigade. There's a reason that A, you haven't seen most of them against other kinds of censorship that show up in games. Yeah. And B, there's a reason you've seen them tie themselves into the quote-unquote anti-woke, anti-diversity community as aggressively as they have. And there's a reason that they're directly connected to the same people who were making arguments that Aloy, for example, was ugly.
Jesus Christ.
There's some deeply rooted misogyny here that's associated with the complaints about censorship in this game. This isn't like let me use Castlevania for an example, right? So everybody knows the NES Castlevania. When that game came over here, it got a lot of stuff censored out of it. Crosses, any sort of religious imagery, were all censored out of the game, right? There's a conversation to be had about whether it's appropriate to censor religious imagery in a game, either way, right? Or Nazi imagery, right, is something that there's been censorship conversations in gaming about, serious conversations, right?
The Super
about whether
Nintendo
or not,
version of
well,
Wolfenstein was censored. Yeah.
Well, I was
Right.
going to say Fallout is speaking of things that are like relevant in the current day and age. Fallout in Japan does not allow you to set off nukes.
Right. So yeah, there's positive and negative conversations out of that to say, hey, is it appropriate for this to be included in this game in this specific region? And the answer sometimes is probably yes. The answer sometimes is probably no. There's a reason that censorship is such a nuanced conversation. Because there's, as much as, like I said, I'm generally the type of person that says if you're already rating the games for age appropriateness, there's probably not much of a reason to do censorship on top of it. But again, that's a nuanced conversation, and that's not what this is, right? Despite the fact that there's sort of a push, it seems now, just like there was with Gamergate, to turn it into something that's legitimate. The reality is this didn't start as a legitimate concern about censorship. It's not a legitimate concern about false advertising, right? Which is what I'm seeing it cached as now. If you go on Sony and you say, yeah, right. If you go on Sony's website now and say that it was false advertising, you can get a refund, right? Like, that's not how this started. This started because there's a group of folks out there who think that diversity and a certain level of sensitivity is ruining their video games. They saw this game as a direct response to that, which maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. The developers don't seem to have confirmed that this was a direct shot at American diversity standards.
So I don't know if you all know who Gene Park is, but he's a journalist for the Washington Post.
Yeah, absolutely, for Washington Post.
Yeah, he's Korean, and he was talking about how, like, this is how Korean developers work. Like, they're very driven by, like, how they look, which is why Korean games a lot of times have these, kind of very pretty people in them.
Well, I mean, look at K-pop, right? Like,
Exactly.
K-pop, the boys have, like, tons of plastic surgery. It's a common thing.
Yeah.
It's
also why, by the way, the only last point I was going to make is that you can tell that this is a unserious movement based on what Jay said, which is the fact that there is plenty of skin in this game. I mean, this is not a modest game by any stretch.
No.
And they have still decided that even the slightest amount of additional modesty is worth kicking off all this conversation, and at the same time they're kicking off this conversation, being very vocally and visually horny on main about this game.
I love how you put that.
That weirdness, the balance of that weirdness is not accidental.
And that's why your girlfriend doesn't want you playing this game, stupid asshole.
Yeah, it's you. It's not the game.
Yeah, it's not the game. It's you.
She's mad at you.
Yeah.
So when this started, I recalled because even though I'm not online, I see it. I saw that originally it was like, oh, the reviewers are not going to like this game because it's got sexy women in it.
Yeah.
And then the reviews came out and they were positive. Suddenly it's about, they removed costumes. Suddenly it's about false advertisement. Oh, just keep moving the goalpost, boys. Just keep moving it. Like, you're already looking pathetic. Writing we're gonna what's it called when you get signatures?
Petition?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
we're gonna get a
petition.
petition. Oh, and the guy that's starting it, by the way, is a grifter.
He's also
100%
50.
he's
He's
a
also
grifter.
55 years old.
Yeah, there's a reason why he doesn't work at the company anymore. Like, I've read stuff about him. People do not like that man. Like, maybe you should look at who you're siding with too. Like, if you're really upset about this, think about take a look at the people around you and think, what are these people in it for? Because you might have good intentions. I mean this in the most serious of way. If anybody's listening, you might have good intentions. What are the intentions of others? Because that's another part you have to think about, is who am I siding with? Because what are these people going to drag me into? Like, I get it. It's kind of weird that like those costumes would be on the disc and then removed. I understand that that's kind of weird. Do you know how much content's on discs that are like not accessible? There was a whole drama about it in the PS2 era called Hot Coffee, and AO stickers had to be put on fucking San Andreas, and you couldn't even access that without like really getting into it, like the code. So like, there's a bunch of stuff that's not there, right? So it's a weird place to get up in arms about, especially when the type of content you were looking for, not real women, CG stuff, the most easily accessible online. Like, you don't stop paying $70 or whatever for a game then. Like, find a different hobby, because this clearly isn't yours anymore. You just want to complain.
I'm glad you guys brought that up about the whole these guys are not taking the issue seriously, because censorship to me is a very important topic, because I'm of the mind, pretty similar to Ryan in that regard, but a little bit more than, I suppose, because I believe it was Mark Twain that says censorship is like telling a man he cannot eat steak because the baby can't chew it. I agree with that line of thinking. I think censorship as a whole, in regards to how it's used in modern society, and also the infatuation with American culture specifically with sexualized imagery. I think there is a big taboo around it, and that kind of carried over from the mindset that video games are for children. And that might have been the case back in the 1960s and 1950s, perhaps, but games have come a very, very long way. Games can quite literally be anything for everyone at any age, given whatever the developer's vision entitles himself. So I'm always for wanting to see the vision that the developer has, and I want them to be able to put it out for everyone to enjoy. And obviously we have the ESRB and things of that nature for good reason, to protect people that are vulnerable, to make them understand the type of content that they should expect within the product before they buy it. So within that context, you have these grifters that come along and they pile into this quote unquote controversy that they've created for themselves, saying that they stand on the fight against censorship. Meanwhile, all they're doing is they're fighting for their own clout. And it really demeans the movement or the message or the importance of fighting against censorship, because of these people don't really care about it. They only care about how it's reflected on themselves and how they can champion it to get more followers and get more people viewing their way. And that's the part that kind of upsets me, because when the developer was asked, like, hey, is this a thing that happened, they accepted it. Was it the director basically like, yeah, that's a thing that we know, and the final version is the one that we want to show everyone, and that should have been the end of it right then and there. That was their creative vision ultimately, to show everyone kind of the way that they wanted to do it, and if that was that, then that's it. But if Sony were to have come along and said, oh, no, you need to censor this because this is not going to fit well with our demographic or something like that, then there is something there to be worth fighting about in terms of that. And, but I don't know. They just don't know. They don't know is it Sony? Is it the developers? Were they faced with a possible AO rating? And then they needed to tone down the sexuality a tiny bit just so that they could get M? Because getting an AO on a console game means death. That's a death sentence.
Yep.
Yeah, you just can't do it. It's just you basically don't put out the game to any console because they can't put it on their digital storefront. Physical stores won't stock it. So your game is dead on arrival, whether or not it's complete or not. So if they needed to make some minor edits to make their games fit into the ESRB's end mold and kind of put it out there,
That's a business decision they have to make, and that's a decision that we have to respect as consumers. And you have to be reasonable in that regard. You have to be able to compromise in that regard. Otherwise, games simply would not be able to be made. Ultimately, when they put out like a Steam version where basically anything goes, and they can put out all the contents and stuff like that they wanted to have put on originally. But if they're asking them to do all these things and put everything back, even if that means they get an AOL rating, then you're just telling these developers to kill themselves.
Yeah, kill
Do you
their own
understand
game.
Yeah. Like, how can you justify a statement like that? So these people are making a movement out of a situation that they don't understand. Is it Sony to blame? Is this actual developer intent, or is it some kind of an ESRB thing that they're trying to bypass? They don't understand or know any of these things. All they want is what they want and nothing else. No consideration to anything else. And these grifters all get together talking about how their follower counters are going up and stuff like that. And then the next time a real conversation comes along, when something of significance is censored, some religious depiction or something of that nature, where we're just not allowed to see the thing that the developer desperately wants to show, and there's a real fight to be had, they're going to be talking about this game again and this movement.
Yeah, and
it bothers me.
It's gonna make serious conversations less serious.
Yes,
because
that's exactly
it's going to make them more difficult to take seriously. And the other thing that it sparked, and I had meant to mention it earlier, but Jay, your conversation just sparked it again, is the purpose, in addition to the follower count purpose of this, the purpose of this is also even more insidious in that the purpose is also to make sure, and it didn't start with this game, right? It's been running since last generation, but it's really ramped up, right? Because we saw it with Mary Jane and Spider-Man. We saw it with Aloy, as I mentioned, in Horizon. We saw it with the main character of Fable, right? Where the purpose is to make sure that any developer that is going to make a game that has a female lead or, mostly lead character in it, the purpose is to make sure that they have to think twice before they design their female characters to influence them to make them these, dress-up dolls that these people want them to be, instead of what their vision for what this character looks like, moves like, dresses like, right? Every single one of them is going to have in the back of their minds now this controversy, and hopefully it doesn't influence anyone's game design, but it's something they're going to have to plan for, and that's the purpose of this movement, is to try to bully developers into producing content that only includes these sort of cartoonish, unrealistic dress-up versions of women.
Which is its own form of censorship. If you're going to force
Correct.
someone to make certain content,
exactly.
And
right.
To kind of talk about it, because I know a bit about it, because I went to school for art and finally I got to use it for something. The to imply that what happened here is censorship is like saying that Da Vinci was censored because for earlier versions of his paint, like underneath the top layer of his painting, he tried and had to redo it. Like, when they scan the Mona Lisa, they can actually see there's other paintings sort of underneath. And it's obviously the same painting, but he's reworked stuff and he's done anatomy drawings and everything. And while that's interesting, that is not the finished product. That is the process of art. If you're going to say, well, video games are art and it shouldn't be censored, welcome to the fold, boys. Like, this is what this is. Like, you don't always get to see the early rough edits. It's cool that we do. Like, it's cool that like sites like Unseen 64 exist and that we can see beta versions of games, and we're lucky sometimes to see trailers of games that aren't coming out for years. Like early Twilight Princess video doesn't look anything like what the final game looks like. Like, yeah, the art style is the same, but like that forest isn't in the final game, and I don't remember Link on a boat in the water fishing and stuff like that. Like, those were in the process removed because it didn't work in the final game. That is not censorship. What is censorship, and I had to remember what the game was called, Devotion. Devotion was taken down from Steam because there was an anti-Chinese like line in it or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it got banned from Steam. Good Old Games was going to put it up. That got banned from there too. That's censorship. That is what censorship is. It's when government comes down and says to people, you can't say that. And legally, that is what censorship is. Censorship is not choosing to self-censor. That is not censorship. It is not censorship if someone says, I will not carry your product, which is what Sony might have done. Like, worst case scenario, that's what Sony did, was said, we aren't going to carry your product unless you change it. Well, they own the storefront. Target doesn't have to carry every product in existence because somebody said they had to. That's not how that works. If you want private companies to be able to do what they want to do, that means that like the same people that you support, like My Pillow or whatever, he has the right to exist, but that doesn't mean other people have to carry his shit either. Like, there's a lot of things that are interconnected, and you understand almost none of them when you get upset about pelvic bones in a video game. That is not censorship. I'm sorry.
It's censorship only by the strictest of definition, but it's not worthwhile censorship.
On the lightest of levels. And again, it's only censorship if like literally like Sony threatens this developer. But that developer could have taken that developer. It's not like Sony's the only person on the market. They could have gone to Xbox. They could have. You know what I'm saying though? Like, if Sony was the only person in like the only game front store, then yes. But that's not the case. They have Steam. They have like all these other places exist. So it's not like this game can't exist because one person says it can't. So it's just there's is it fucked up that we only have like a single store on Sony devices? Yeah, that's what that whole conversation is happening in the mobile space with like iPhone and or Apple and Epic. That's the reason why that exists, because Apple wants certain restrictions and Epic has the money to fight it. But again, not really a censorship conversation. Generally, that refers to government saying to people, it's the same thing of like, you can say whatever you want, but you are not exempt from the consequences of what you say. It sucks sometimes. I know I probably will get called out for something I said today, I'm sure. But like, they're not saying
I think for this particular case, to Anthony, I would only view it in terms of a creative work and nothing else. Like, it doesn't have to necessarily be a government that's the only thing that can do censorship. It can be whatever else that has any kind of influence over your work. In this particular case, they do have an exclusive deal with PlayStation, so if they weren't going to publish the game, they'd be kind of shit out of water in this particular situation. So I'm not sure if that would be a good example, but my statement only goes along with an artist, right? Where in this particular time, a director and his team have a vision that they want to show everyone. They have a certain type of world. They have certain types of characters and combat engines they want to showcase. And they have the right, and they should have the creative freedom to be able to make it however they want within the bounds of the rating system that's allowed within the platform. Right. So in that way, if the platform holder says that, hey, if you don't do this, then we're not going to release your game, or you got something, that I would view that still as a part of censorship. I think it comes down to the seriousness of the censorship in question, whether or not Eve is wearing a thong or a fucking full teddy bear costume, because that's also in the game too. You don't see any skin or anything like that while wearing that. Doesn't impact the gameplay in the slightest. So in that way,
it's not a significant source of censorship, and they're saying that this is on principle. There shouldn't be any type of censorship and stuff like that, and they are like, quote unquote, dying on this hill. And we all know that they're not really serious about that particular notion because of their background and the way that they're handling it, and the fact that they actually don't even know who to blame. They're just angry for the sake of being angry. And that's just kind of it. They just chase the newest bit of controversy. If there isn't a newest bit of controversy, they try their darndest to create one for themselves to pile onto. And then people, whether with good intentions or bad, and oftentimes I would say mostly with good intentions, because I think many people have the same feeling, like, hey, I just want the game that the developer wanted to make, and to give to everyone. I want that game, right? I think that's a pretty harmless and even a good thing to say in a lot of ways, because you want to be for the developers in that way. But the good intentions and everything in between is kind of being twisted with the messaging and the seriousness they're kind of like tackling this particular issue. And that's the thing that kind of gets me the most. But I think you guys both basically said it out in regards to how the situation really is and what's going to happen as a consequences of it, where there's going to be a real conversation about censorship that's needed, and then it's going to be looked down upon. And on the other side of this whole debacle is the people that are always naysayers to anything that has any kind of sexual thing. They're saying like, Stellar Blade features a character that looks like a fucking sex doll, so the game must be garbage. It must only be about sex and sex appeal, despite the fact that that's like a very small fraction of what the game is even about. The same kind of people that went on talk shows talking about how Mass Effect is about going around the galaxy fucking aliens, and Baldur's Gate 3 is about fucking bears.
Wait, it's not?
They don't have an understanding on the situation, but they want to speak out, regardless of that fact. And I feel like there is some aspect of that needs to just stop. Like they need to seriously understand the topic at hand, form their own opinion instead of trying to dogpile on someone else's opinion, for a clout or for whatever reason. And then at that point in time, we could have a real conversation about censorship and everything else that goes around it. But until then, I don't see it actually being useful at all or being progressive in any meaningful way.
I was just going to say, there's a, as I mentioned before, I think our conversation about censorship is probably more meaningful, serious than what they're actually trying to accomplish. There's a reason that this particular group of folks who are making noise about this game only make noise when a character is wearing more clothes than they want them to, or is black when they don't want them to be, or is gay when they don't want them to be. The usual suspects, right, are all out here, and they're the same folks that complain about that kind of stuff too, and it makes it incredibly obvious that this really isn't a conversation about censorship at all.
Yeah, I might be putting too much thought into that whole aspect. Anyways, like my biggest thing though is like, if you have good intentions, like please see these people for who they are. It is fine to be upset and it's fine to make a point, but like, do not die on the hill for digital ass and titties. Please, God, don't do that. Like, there's so many better things to fight for in life. That this is just not the hill to die on. Like, if you're upset, don't give them your money again. And honestly, if you feel like you've been ripped off, sure, get your money back, but like, please see these people for the grift that they are pulling. Like Jay and Ryan have said, like, these people always have something going on. Something like it's too toxic. It's part of the reason why I left Twitter. Like, I didn't need to see this shit all the time. And like, the reason why I know about Stellar Blade is because when people actually talk about the game, it's mostly positive. Except for that one person that said it was like a submarine simulator, which is kind of funny, but because of the ping system. But like like most people are enjoying this game, and then there's just this super loud vocal people that are being weird about it. It's not even like actually upset. It's like this weird I don't even know, like making up things to be
It's
upset about.
it's performative.
Performative, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, if you're legitimately upset, like just please look at who's to the left and right of you and decide if those are the people that you should be hanging out with. That's more than anything. Like forget all the fucking talk about censorship and all that stuff. Maybe it is, but like please look at who you're hanging with and don't let these people take advantage of you. I have no skin in the game. I'm not asking for your money or your time.
Unlike Stellar Blade, who has plenty of skin in the game.
Good Lord, let's end it on that. Whew, you know who's happy about all this controversy? I was gonna say, you know who's happy about all this controversy?
Who?
Xbox, because nobody's talking about their fuck ups this week.
Oh God, do they?
Let's talk about it.
Week?
Yes, let's talk about them. Well, good news out the front. As you're listening to this, there's an ID at Xbox Digital Showcase happening on Monday, April 29th at 10 a.m. Pacific Time.
Are they going to announce all the new games that are going to PlayStation during that?
Well, this is an ID at Xbox. This is independent games, so they're probably on everything.
I know. I just wanted to make the joke.
Oh, don't worry, we'll get there. This will feature Dungeons of Hinterberg, 33 Immortals, Lost Records, Bloom and Rage, and more. Do you think Hollow Knight? Maybe finally, maybe.
We'll see. I hope so. I liked the first Hollow Knight. I know, Ken, that you're not a big fan, but
no, I'm not. I hope everybody gets it.
I didn't love it either.
Like, I hope everybody gets what they want. But you know what game I am expecting tomorrow morning is probably Kena, Bridge of Spirits, because that got rated, so probably going to show up there.
Good.
Song's been rated too, so.
Yeah, and Microsoft has the reason why I don't believe it's ever going to happen at a direct is because Microsoft has the marketing rights. So if it's going to show up anywhere, it's going to be here or the June showcase. All right, let's talk about one more good piece of news for Microsoft. StarCraft 1, 2, Diablo 2, and 3 are coming to GeForce Now. That's pretty cool. But unfortunately, that's all the good Microsoft news I have for you. Let's start with no BlizzCon. Blizzard announced this week that BlizzCon is canceled for the year, and they hope to bring it back in the future.
Why do you think this happened, Ken? Like, in your opinion, like based on the let's say the fresh landscape of Blizzard being a part of Microsoft, right? This is one of the first years to ever be off. Like, they've been pretty consistent, even having it digitally, you know? So it hasn't stopped them before. But so do you think there's a correlation between VOD or is that another conspiracy?
I think it's a conspiracy. I think it's they don't have anything. Like,
that didn't stop them from having one before, though.
But they always had something to announce. Like,
had a mobile game.
Like, yeah.
The Warcraft game sucks.
The Warcraft expansions were all announced last year, like 3 of them, so they're not going to talk about that. Overwatch is, maybe there's a new hero ready for BlizzCon, but I don't know. Diablo, there's an expansion coming, but I'm going to guess it's not anytime soon, right?
I think it's before the end of the year, so
I wouldn't count on that.
Yeah, I think it's 2024. I thought that was the thing, but I could be wrong.
It's Blizzard timing, though. Come on.
Yeah, that's true. TBH.
Yeah. And then that new game they're working on, God knows if it ever exists. Like, I don't think it's because of Xbox. I think it's mostly just probably they just don't have anything. I mean, that's my guess. Why would Xbox cancel a show unless they're going to show Blizzard stuff at like the June showcase? I don't know.
Well, that's just the thing. Like, that's the narrative around. You know how it is. People love to dogpile and speculate, with no evidence whatsoever. But the narrative is that Microsoft wants to not do BlizzCon in this situation because, like you said before, they have their own show coming in June, and B, they don't want to take focus away and keep Blizzard kind of as its own entity, kind of wanting to be a part of an umbrella company, meaning that it's part of Microsoft, it's not its own thing anymore. And them having BlizzCon kind of has a contrary message to that because it's right in the name, it's BlizzCon. It's not Microsoft Con, you know what I mean? So
I understand that.
They don't want to be,
They didn't cancel QuakeCon.
QuakeCon, I think the size and scope of the cons are very different.
Sure, but everybody knows QuakeCon.
I think BlizzCon will be back. I just think legit don't have anything to show.
Yeah, I think we see the
I hope
return
so.
of BlizzCon next year. I think that's my guess, and they'll show off their new game and probably Diablo expansion because it still won't be out. Yeah.
Because honestly, like that on a name basis for a company you've bought, that makes more sense to keep than like Activision, right? Like Blizzard still had their own thing, even though they are part of Activision. So I just don't think BlizzCon's going away. I just think it's literally because there's nothing to talk about.
Yeah, that's my guess.
Plus,
Okay.
if I heard there was something that happened at one of them where it was like not that it was a bad story, but it was kind of annoying for the people that were there. So I think they have to kind of go back and rethink how they do their merch and stuff, because there was something like you had to buy like the balls from like a little like gumball machine and then opened it up and then you can got something. And I heard there was a nightmare with that and the lines were too long or something like that. Maybe that was a couple years ago, but like I recall hearing problems about how BlizzCon was set up. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're going kind of refiguring it out too.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, that could be. I mean, you know, they just switched their CEO quite recently as well, right? So a lot of restructuring within the company going on. My general consensus in situations like that is that it's always never just one thing. It's always a combination of a bunch of different things, and it's probably the case here as well. So hopefully, hopefully they'll be coming back nice and strong because BlizzCon has always been kind of like an event, especially for someone that's always enjoyed a lot of Blizzard games, like seeing the kind of crazy announcements that they have, the crazy like fan appreciation things that they would do. I always like that, so it was a little disheartening to see it gone. So hopefully they'll be back stronger than ever next year.
All right. Next up, we've got Microsoft's Q3 earnings, or whatever quarter this was for. I don't think it was Q3. I think it's Q1. Xbox content and services revenue up 62%. Gaming revenue up 51%. Record in streamed hours, console usage, and monthly active devices is up. Hardware is down 31%.
Well, and that 61% number is hiding a little bit the fact that they would have been down if it weren't for the Activision Blizzard acquisition.
Oh, sure, but they did buy it, so
they did.
It still counts for them, I guess.
But I think there's something to be said for the fact that their gaming division would have been down without that acquisition.
Oh yeah, 100%. But
did you talk about Game Pass subscription numbers, Ken, in that data?
No, they did not talk about Game Pass subscription numbers. It's flat. Let's be frank about it.
Okay.
It's definitely flat. One of the crazy stats I saw coming out of this conversation, Xbox has as many monthly active users as PlayStation does with like, what do you say, like 30 to 40% of the console sales? Which is crazy to me.
I mean, has as many, what was that again?
Monthly active users.
Gotcha.
This is crazy.
Hold on, I'm trying to get my head around this. So they have as many as active monthly users versus PlayStation's what exactly?
Monthly active users.
Versus PlayStation monthly active users.
Oh, so they have only like 30% of PlayStation active users in terms of numbers.
No, as in sales. So, like, if you look at
despite the fact that there's not as many Xboxes in the markets, they have the same number of monthly active players, which indicates.
I was right. Okay.
Which either indicates that people aren't playing on their PlayStations that much, or it's got something else weird in it, like they're including anyone who uses an Xbox Game Bar on a PC game, or like they're including Microsoft games like Game Pass on PC.
Yeah, you know that Xbox thing starts with your computer when you buy a fucking PC, right? And you install the Xbox app on it. It just starts with the computer. Yeah. So automatically. So if it's counting all of that, then yeah, I'm surprised it's not more. If that's the case.
Yeah, I don't know what it specifically counts. I think it's just Xbox stuff, but I don't know. So.
But my thing would be interesting. Like, do they have any apps that are not available on PlayStation.
Are you saying do they have apps that are on PlayStation that they own? Is that
No. Like, so with all the streaming services,
yeah?
is there an app that is on Xbox that is not on PlayStation?
Oh,
Because
like a Netflix
Paramount.
or
Yeah, let's say Paramount Plus. If they
No.
are
think
only
so.
on,
Not anymore.
Yeah,
I
no.
didn't think so. That isn't a common thing, but that was a big thing that boosted numbers back in the Wii, Xbox 360, PS3
Yeah.
era.
It used to be Disney Plus wasn't available on PlayStation for a long time, but it has been for a while.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
been on there for a while now.
So,
Well, you never know who stays on a console just because it has it, right? Because like I have an Xbox One, Disney Plus might be on it. I don't have to upgrade to anything, and I don't need a PS5, so I'll just keep using the Xbox for Disney Plus. You never
Yeah.
like I don't know, but to me, that's how you boost those numbers.
I think.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say. Honestly, I just think that console sales are just flat at this point. I think PlayStation 5 sales are just literally the people who bought PS4. Same with Xbox. Like anybody buying a Series console, like they haven't moved the needle for new people. Like new people are playing on exactly what we talked about: phones, PCs, tablets. Like they're not playing on consoles.
Yeah, it probably also speaks to the time could also speak to the average age of the folks that are playing on it. So I'd like to see that too. I'd like to see average age playing based on console because like most of my son's friends that I know have Xboxes, not PlayStations, and they're playing games that incentivize playing them for a long time, like Roblox and
Mm-hmm.
Minecraft and Fortnite, stuff like that.
That's true. Yeah, that's a great point. Like especially Minecraft, a lot of people that are playing like Xbox and those that's like repeat customers kind of deal, those kind of
Yeah.
situations where it really is like the only game that they play oftentimes. So maybe it is those kind of games. But Minecraft is also on PlayStation, isn't it?
Yeah,
Or is it
it's
not?
on everything. And we talked
Okay.
about this a few weeks ago. Like, what is it? Like 80 to 90% of people like playing games or playing games for more than 5+ years ago.
I think you've
Yeah.
now said that 3 weeks in a
Mhm.
row, Ken.
I mean, but it's crazy, right?
It is
It is
crazy.
crazy.
Like, I can't get over that in my head. Like, we talk about games coming out and their sales numbers, and they're all just kind of stagnant. And it's like, because everybody's playing GTA and Minecraft and Fortnite,
Mhm.
and like nobody plays. I do it
Yeah,
myself. You know.
that's partially why I think this generation has been so kind of lackluster because
Yeah.
it's the people are just playing old shit.
That and the fact that we did cross-gen for like 2.5 years. That was a
Yeah,
big
but we
one.
Yeah.
kind of did that last year too, or last gen too. Not as long, but there was a lot of cross gen last
Oh,
go
absolutely,
around.
but it was over within 12 months. This time it lasted almost 3 years.
Yeah,
I literally played
COVID's to
Sandland and
blame a
you
little bit for some of
Yeah, I was
that.
gonna say Anthony just
Mhm.
is playing a brand new game and it's on PS4. It's crazy. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. They certainly have done a bad job at like incentivizing the exclusives and stuff like that. Like my PS5 is basically an exclusives and Crunchyroll machine. That's it. I play nothing that's multi-platform. I always play those on PC and stuff like that. And why would
my,
I? Why wanna pay an online subscription cost for something that I barely use, So
yep,
it even incentivizes me to use the console less compared to playing on something that has free online like PC or whatever. Even if you're on like tablets and stuff like that, you don't need to pay money extra to pay this kind of thing. So they're continuously adding additional barriers of entry to console gaming. And the sales are indicating that that's not going over well in terms for the consumers. And like you guys were saying, like I think we are kind of in the dying breed where we are very up on the know in terms of new releases. We're always like playing new things every month, right? Like all of us. But that's not a common thing, in
right.
terms of that. Like
no.
people find something that they like and they just continuously play that, which I think is kind of crazy. But then I also put in 250 hours in Helldivers in like a month and a half. So,
Right.
I
I
don't
can't really speak on that.
I think Anthony's the only person that I know like personally who doesn't have a game that they just play. Like my house is this way. Like two people in my house, all they play is Roblox.
I just never been like that.
Yeah, and then me, all I play is Overwatch. You
I
know.
mean, I did Overwatch for a while. That's the longest I've ever stuck with a game that was ongoing.
Yeah, like I know Ryan plays Helldivers, Jay plays Helldivers. Like everybody gets their
Like-
game, and they
and
just
like
play it.
before that, like the only game I played like a significant amount of online or like consistently that wasn't like a big RPG was Battlefield 4 on PS4.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, it's like that's almost a perfect like percentage there of like people I know. Like 90% of people I know have one game that they sink the most time into. Speaking of games people spend a lot of time into, Donald Mustard, who used to work at Epic Games, told GameFile that Samus is not in Fortnite because Nintendo wanted the Samus skin to only be visible for Nintendo Switch users, which Epic was not cool with.
That's so silly too, because it's like, why not? I mean, even if everybody in the world knows who Samus is, why not still advertise the fact that Samus is a thing that exists that they could play if they wanted to on a Nintendo?
Yeah.
Do you
Why not?
remember the story of Ultimate Marvel Ultimate Alliance?
3?
Did anybody else? No, the original. It was going to be. They were going to have Samus in it.
Really?
And yep, and they showed it to Nintendo, but because they were working off of like a dev kit, I think for PS2, because that was the weakest of the bunch that they had to get to, it had the face buttons. This is now watch me be wrong, and this has been disproven, but that's the story that went around for years. They showed it to Nintendo, and Nintendo loved it, except that it had Sony buttons on the icons, and they went absolutely not.
That's hilarious. You know what? That would not shock me if that was true.
Right, and I mean, to some extent, like the developers should have known better, but at the same time, like that's the reason why Samus is not in those games. Like they removed I think they may have had Link planned too. Like two characters, I think, were planned.
Honestly, good. I don't need Samus and Link in my Marvel superheroes game.
You know
for
what?
sure, but you know what I'm saying. Like it's the same sort of like we don't play ball with others.
Yeah,
Right.
that's why like when you go look at the HD version of Soul Calibur 2 on Xbox and PlayStation, it does not have Link, because why would it?
Well, that makes sense, but it's like, why was there no HD release for Nintendo console?
Does it have Spawn though?
Yeah, it has
And
Spawn.
Hayachi?
Yeah, it has Spawn and Hihachi
Yeah.
in both versions.
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
Yep. Because, most people don't... I mean, Kratos is playable on Fortnite on Xbox, and Master Chief is playable on PlayStation on Fortnite.
Yep.
So
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Nintendo has always had this very well-deserved reputation when it comes to being very, like, exclusive when it comes to a lot of their things. And then they have like weird deals sometimes out of nowhere. It feels very inconsistent to me, But they've always had this reputation. I don't expect them to change it anytime soon.
no. Also coming to Nintendo Switch Online expansion pack, 2 new N64 games, Extreme G and Iggy's Wrecking Balls.
Not terrible choices.
Those are
No,
both
Extreme
solid
G
games.
was great.
Yeah, solid games. Iggy is very underrated. I think you should play it. It's a good game. I'm gonna skip the new releases unless there's anything on here like super excited, because we're already running way long. What happens when you censor boobies?
That's right.
Rock Band controllers.
Censoring our new releases.
I mean, upcoming new release, like release dates. That's what I
Yeah,
skipped.
you're censoring them because you didn't read them.
I am. I'm censoring them unless you really care about Tales of the Shire, a Lord of the Rings game.
Depends on what Frodo's wearing.
They censored his hairy feet. You don't know. Rock Band.
There's a lot of fat like foot fetish people. I've learned a lot more than I expected in this world.
There's websites dedicated to it. Be afraid.
What? There's a wiki. I used to follow a podcast, and the guy was trying to get up to the top of the wiki feed or whatever the fuck it's called.
God.
It's
So
I'm.
I mean, it's great because he basically got all of his fans to vote him in the top spot with his ugly ass feet.
More power to him, man. I've learned a lot more. The more I lived on this planet of ours, the more that I've learned and more that I've become accepting of the weird shit.
Because
Hey.
I think as much as it is easy for us to kind of scoff at things that seem kind of weird or unnatural, the alternative to weird I learned is boring. So people can be weird, as long as they're
There's
not hurting
level.
anybody.
Hey,
Yeah.
There's
I
levels
Well,
to
that's
everything.
why I say as long as they're not hurting anybody, you can
Yeah.
be
Right.
weird.
I don't-
Do your own thing.
As
Be
long as you're not,
consulting adults, be weird. Yeah.
surreptitiously taking pictures of people's feet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
don't do
exactly.
that. Don't
Yeah.
don't do anything to other
That's an
people.
But
offense.
I do. If that is your thing, I have good news. I looked up Tales of the Shire. If you were like, man, I really like these gardening games, but I don't see enough feet. All the hobbits are like shoeless. So
I'll just wait till Sony gets a hold of it.
Yep. They're gonna censor them toes, man. They're gonna censor them toes.
but they don't put shoes on. They're blurred out like an episode of Cops.
That'd be great.
That would be great.
If you wanted to use your
Black
Rock
bars.
Band, your Rock Band controller in Fortnite Festival, it's now available. As well as if you can wait a few months, that new guitar is on Amazon. You can buy it.
PDP.
Yeah, the PDP Riffmaster, which a bunch of people got them. They said it's pretty cool. I don't know when I'll ever get mine because
When's the release date?
it came out last week.
They're
Wait,
just
so
super back ordered.
oh, I thought you were pre-ordering them. I didn't know they were back ordered.
No,
Okay,
I missed the
understand.
pre-order window. Like it was very
Mhm.
small. It was like in the evening, and I just missed it, so I didn't get the first run. And they said the
Gotcha.
next run is probably June. So I'm like, fuck.
Well, I hope you get it sooner than I got my Steam Deck a year after its release.
Yeah, it's like if I go to Amazon, it just says we'll email you. I'm like, thanks. What else is going on here that's interesting? I don't think anything else on here. I'll just skip the rest of this, and we'll just move on to one tweet and one email. Jeremy writes in on Twitter and says, "Hey guys, finally saw the end of Dragon's Dogma 2. I think
Don't spoil it.
it's not spoiled in here." He says, "I have a couple more endings I haven't figured out, but starting my third playthrough to max out all of my other vocations. This is right up there with Elden Ring and Tears of the Kingdom. For me, game of the year for me."
Sweet.
It's an excellent game.
I look forward to playing it once it's more stable.
I always love when people write emails and tell me I'm wrong. Please continue to do that. I love it.
Well, if you weren't wrong so much.
I know. That's the problem. Is like, Daryl writes in and says, "Hello, chuckleheads." That's not very nice.
Ooh.
Daryl here just wanted to comment on a few things from the last podcast. Larian said that they did not want to work on someone else's IP and want to work on their own IPs in the future. I believe I heard that it didn't mean they're just their existing IPs, but rather their own IPs in general. If they're working on 2 games, then yes, one is likely a Divinity game. But when I read the quotes, it seemed they were not talking about their existing IPs, just that they wanted to work on their own IPs.
Yeah, I don't think it's 100% certain yet what it is, but it would be strange to me if it wasn't Divinity stuff, because they invested a lot into that sort of universe. Mm-hmm. So I would be surprised if at least one, if they were creating a new IP out of sort of whole cloth. I would be surprised.
Did they mention that they were specifically working for 2, Ryan, or is it just kind of speculation?
They're making 2 games, I think, is what's been discussed, that are new IPs, or that are their own IPs. I would be surprised even if it wasn't, if it's 2 games. My guess is they're both not Divinity RPGs. It would be surprising to me if it wasn't like an Obsidian Avowed situation where it's in the Pillars of Eternity universe, but it's a different style game. It wouldn't surprise me if it was something that was sort of in the Divinity universe, but was a different style game. Because I can't imagine that they built up all the lore that they built up in the Divinity universe without continuing that series in some way. So you're probably right. Both of them may not be Divinity games, but I would be really surprised if at least one of them isn't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could see them doing something different in the Divinity universe just to avoid direct comparisons to their last two games, which were both absolute masterclasses. Maybe you don't want to release another game and have to compare to Divinity Original Sin 2 and Baldur's Gate 3 back to back. Maybe you want to do something a little different, but I mean, they know what they know, and they're currently the best at it. So whatever it is, I'm excited for it.
Man,
yeah, that's the thing.
I was gonna say,
Whatever they make is going to be on my most anticipated game. And do you guys also remember that Divinity Dragon Commander, the game that Larian made that one time?
Yeah,
Imagine if it's like a sequel of that.
Yeah, it could be.
So I'm reading his second part where he tells me I'm wrong, and I read through this like 3 times now. Is there anybody on this show that understands Game Pass and PS Plus more than I do? Like, I'm just. He says he thinks. Okay, I'm just gonna read it because I don't remember ever saying anything to the contrary of this conversation. He says, "Okay, Ken, seems like you keep misunderstanding Game Pass. At one time, Games with Gold offered free 360 and OG Xbox games with Games with Gold that you could keep forever. Yes, I've talked about that many times. Whether you canceled Games with Gold or not. The Xbox One games they offered, like PS Plus, you needed to be subscribed to play them. Also, yes, I know that. I've said that multiple times. That's how I own Watch Dogs. So even if they offered them, you still never owned them. Correct. Fast forward to 2024, all games on PS Plus and Xbox Game Pass are only playable if you subscribe. Again, I know that. The Xbox Core is the cheapest tier and offers multiplayer and a small group of Game Pass games, 25 or so, which have new games added each month. That is incorrect. Game Pass Core does not add new games every month. You are wrong, sir. They specifically stated in that PR release the games would be added sporadically. Game Pass Core does not get new games every month.
Well, so correct me if I'm wrong, because I know way less about this than you do, but Game Pass Core is the thing that
there's a collection.
I'm not saying it was a replacement, but its existence came about after Games with Gold was discontinued.
Exactly. And it's the lowest tier. It's like $10 a month. You get multiplayer, and you get a collection. I'm using finger quotes. A collection of games, which when they initially put it out, they put like 40 something games out there, and those continue to be in that service. And they said they would add new ones over time, but it would not be monthly like Game Pass Ultimate and Game Pass Regular. Like, it would just be every now and then they would announce Game Pass Core games, which we talked about on the last show, those 3 that they added, which was like, what's the Deep Rock Galactic game and like 2 others. They add those. Like, that's the first time I'd seen a Game Pass Core drop. They do not drop those every month. Right. They do not.
Okay.
But this is, to be clear, and I think this might be where the confusion is stemming from. It is a replacement for Xbox Live Gold.
Yes.
Not from the games you get, but the fact that it is your online payment.
Yes, to play online.
Because
it's the base level.
Yes, because Gold was the only level back in the day because it was Silver that was free and it had like no features.
Yes.
Correct.
I think that's the point that needs to be made. That I don't really understand. So I listened to the podcast last week and I didn't hear potentially what this is in reference to.
I think the general sentiment, and I because we haven't, I don't think, finished the email yet. I don't know if this is the sentiment that's being argued, but I think the general sentiment is there used to be a tier that was Game Pass Gold. Or Games with Gold, sorry.
Yeah, it was part of Xbox Live Gold. Yeah.
Right. That got you your online play and games to keep.
Mm-hmm. But did not include any form of Game Pass.
Correct. And that service is gone. And even there is no service existing now where you can keep any of the games they give you.
No, those are just you can play them if you're subscribed. Yes.
So I think the general conversation was at the cheapest level with games with gold, you used to at least be able to keep the games, even though there weren't that many and they were shitty.
Yeah.
And now that has gone away, and there doesn't even exist a tier where you get to keep any of the games.
And you didn't get to keep Xbox One games. You only got to keep 360 and OG Xbox games.
Yeah.
Those were yours forever. The Xbox One games, if you canceled the gold, you couldn't play those anymore. To continue, he says, but this Game Pass core service does not have day one releases like Game Pass or Game Pass Ultimate do. I know that. That's
Yes.
yeah, core.
It's more like the PlayStation Plus. What do they call
Essential.
Yeah, but no, not that. There's like the library, instant library or whatever.
That's part of premium, I think.
Okay. I thought that. No, remember when PlayStation 5 came out, they did that. If you were subscribed to PlayStation Plus, this was before they added the levels. They had that instant library.
Yeah, when you bought a PS5, you could claim them.
It was a curated section of like 15 games
Mm-hmm.
that you could play on your PlayStation 5.
And you got to keep those as long as you redeemed them, as long as you kept PlayStation Plus or whatever. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
And they got rid of that.
Yes, it's gone. So like Wario was tweeting like, "Hey, here's your last chance to claim these. Here's your last chance to claim these," and it's over now. So. Continuing, it says all services have games that come and go. So even mentioning that the core's offering is paltry is misunderstanding the service. I don't. What?
No, the point is that it's not as good as Xbox Live Gold. That's the point that Ken was making.
Yeah, it's because you got new games every month. You didn't get them like once every 6 months, and they were just adding some. Like it's a different service.
It's not about comparing Game Pass Core to Game Pass Ultimate. It's about comparing Game Pass Core to what it replaced.
Yes, Gold. Yeah.
The service where you actually could keep the games. The point we made, if you go back and listen to the shows from the time period when they were discussing getting rid of Game Pass Gold, or games with gold or whatever it was. Our general sentiment was that they're doing this, and they're making the service worse by doing it because you don't get to keep any of the games anymore. So people complained so much about how bad the games were that they were giving away for free, that they just stopped giving them away for free instead of improving the games that they were giving away, which is what they could and should have done. They just completely stopped giving them to you. You just don't get to keep any of them anymore. And that was, in my opinion, bad and anti-consumer behavior. Instead of just improving the game, they were like, okay, well, you guys don't like the games we're giving away, we'll just stop giving them away. Instead of, you don't like the games we're giving away, we'll make them better.
Yeah.
Of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, as it were. Yeah.
Yeah, and literally on their website, they list Game Pass Core as having a catalog of over 25 high-quality games. 25. Yeah. He says, sorry, I lost my place. Game Pass gets a lot more games each month, including Core, than the... Oh, it says, why not mention that what games are offered on the Core service this month? Because it's been the same since it started, except for the 3 that they just added. Actually, you should mention all the games coming to PS Plus and Game Pass as a whole. We try to do that when it's in the news. We always do the rundown of the PlayStation games, and then the drops for the Game Pass games every week. Game Pass gets a lot more games each month, including Core. Core does not get new games every month. Where is this coming from?
I don't know, but this is like a Game Pass commercial in the middle of our show. So,
Core.
I mean, I don't know. I think you're the first person who's ever written into the show in the history of the world who thinks that Ken doesn't like Xbox enough. So I don't even quite know what to say, but I mean, we're not. We go through news, we go through new releases, we talk about what we think about the various services. This is not an Xbox podcast. Like, it's also not a PlayStation podcast. It's not a Steam podcast. It's not a Nintendo podcast. It's a video game podcast. Hell, the song used to say, "Play games, not consoles." So we're not gonna We're not going to do a commercial for Game Pass every month.
Hey, did you know
Number
you
one,
can get a bunch of
Microsoft
games on
doesn't
Game
pay
Pass
me
for
that.
$1?
Yeah, right. I think everybody here subscribes to Game Pass. When we play a game that's on Game Pass, we always mention that it's on Game Pass. But this email feels to me like why don't you guys talk about how much you love Game Pass enough?
So I looked it up
which
because
is
I wanted to
weird.
see when the
Yeah.
last time stuff was added before recently. It is extremely difficult to find like articles about what is coming to Core specifically. But I did find an article from Game Rant from November 30th, 2023. They added 2 games. It was Chivalry 2 and Totally Reliable Delivery Service. That is the 2 games, and that was in November. And that is the only article that's the last time let me rephrase that. That is before this week or whatever, the last time I can find games added to Game Pass Core specifically, because most people are not covering that, and Xbox is not very good at saying what is coming to it.
So
because nothing comes to it. So I'm quickly looking through the list, and
they dropped a big bunch when it first launched, when they replaced it, and from my understanding, reading the news and keeping up every week, those 5 games we just talked about, the 3 that were added in April and the 2 that were added in November, are the only 5 games that have ever been added to that service. Core sucks.
At the end of the day,
41 games. There's 41 games.
If you believe that it is a controversial opinion to say that a $10 a month service that used to give you 3 games that you could keep forever every month is better than a $10 service that gives you a total of 25 games or whatever it is that
41.
you don't even 41 that you don't get to keep at all, and that doesn't get updated on a consistent basis, then I'm not really sure what we're doing here. Yes, it is a worse service. A service that is the same price where you can't keep anything is a worse service. It just is. I don't know what else to say. And yes, I know that all the services are like that. It's worse. It just is.
So from let's go back just quickly. I'm gonna go back to the beginning. You paid for Xbox Live. You didn't pay for Sony. So you had silver, gold, and you got nothing extra with gold outside of being able to play online with friends. Sony, kind of in an infinite wisdom idea, decided to give you 2 games a month, and then it upped for a while. Now I think it's back down to 2.
No, it's 3. It's still 3.
It's 3.
Okay.
Yeah, it's 3.
So what they did was they gave you a couple games per month to pay for online. But for the most part, you didn't have to pay for online until the PS4. And then you had to pay for online, but they still gave you all those games. Xbox responded in kind with games with gold, which made it, again, a little bit more worthwhile. And then they went to Game Pass. Gold got phased out, and the service they replaced it with is worse, like Ryan said.
It's worse.
Now, that being said, the games that you can play include things like Dishonored 2, Doom Eternal, Fallout 4. So it's not like these games are bad, and I don't think anyone's saying the games that you get to play with the Game Pass Core are bad. It's just, the point is that this service is sort of inexcusable for what it was replacing.
Yeah,
that's the point.
The point from my perspective is that they had a service that gave you games you could keep. Everybody complained that the games they were giving you to keep sucked, because at the end they did.
Yes.
When the service first started, the games they gave you to keep were pretty good. Then, as they got to the end, the games sucked. Everybody said, this service now sucks because the games you're giving us to keep forever are terrible. The billion-dollar corporation that just bought 3 different publishing houses over the last 5 years could have taken that feedback and said, you know what, you're right. We're going to give you better games to keep every month. Instead, they said, we'll give you a worse version of Game Pass for the same price as the gold that you were paying for. That's worse.
And they achieved their goal too, because nobody talks about Game Pass Core because it just sucks.
Correct. Yeah, nobody goes online every month and says, "Hey, man, the Game Pass Gold games this month really do suck, don't they?"
Yeah.
Because they eliminated the service instead of making it better. Now, we can have an argument about whether it made sense for them to continue giving those games away. We can have an argument about the quality of games that are on that service. That's fine. It is inarguable that a $10 a month service that includes games you can keep forever is worse than a $10 a month service that includes games you cannot. No, better. Sorry, I said that backwards.
I just want to note that Jay's
inarguable.
Quiet, and I know exactly what Jay's thinking, and Jay's going, you don't have to pay for online on PC.
That is
You know,
true.
Anthony, the beautiful thing about things you don't have to say to make a point is that you don't have to say them. Moving on.
All right, yeah, let's finish. So his last couple sentences: Game Pass gets a lot more games each month, including Core, which they do not get new games every month. Then the highest tier on PlayStation, which was supposed to get OG PlayStation games, have they even added 3 games this year? Yes, they have. They have added probably about 10 or 15 games over the last few months. I'm not saying they're good, but
it's not a Sony Microsoft conversation. That's why I was saying this email is like a stealth Game Pass commercial, because it's not a Microsoft Sony conversation, despite the fact that everybody wants to make every conversation into a Microsoft Sony conversation. It's a Microsoft conversation. The Microsoft product is worse than the old Microsoft product.
Which I think he agrees with here in his last sentence. He says, so anyway, games with gold used to be good when you actually got free games for eternity.
Yes, correct.
But then ultimately ended up only adding games which were really just 2 more Game Pass games you needed a subscription to play them. But the thing is...
You are correct, and that has nothing to do with PlayStation, by the way.
It doesn't have anything to do with PlayStation, and also, yes, they're just Game Pass games because it's a Game Pass Core.
Right.
It's called Game Pass Core, which means you get some Game Pass games.
We don't mean to be mean, man, but I would never fuck when it comes to Game Pass knowledge with Ken. So for the same reason, I would never fuck with Anthony when it comes to Sonic knowledge. They know their stuff. You know what I mean? So like, don't come at us saying that like, oh, you're wrong about this without giving us a solid example of what he said before, because you didn't give us that. Because he might have misspoken. It's possible we spent hours talking about things. We might have misspoken on something or another. But if you don't have something like that, our general consensus is that Ken's never been wrong about that in terms of what they offer, and I think we give a very fair and balanced treatment in terms of like Xbox and PlayStation and what's coming and stuff like that when it comes to PS Plus coverage and what's coming to Game Plus and stuff like that. If you don't like that we cover both, or if you don't like the fact that we don't highlight Microsoft specifically, then there are other podcasts that might take, I guess cater more towards your taste. That's basically it.
The best point that can be made is that the tier system that both these companies have put into place are
fucking trash.
It's trash.
Both of these services were better when there was a single tier.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
And there was a clear dividing line between the customers. So there was people that played on Xbox that only paid for online and got some games with it. That's cool. And there are people that paid for everything and got Game Pass. Great. Sony was either don't pay or pay, and now it's pay or pay more or pay even more.
Yeah.
And like that.
I mean, how many times have we had the conversation on this podcast about how all the tiers of PlayStation Plus
we call it PlayStation PP.
It's terrible. It's awful.
It's a terrible concept.
And then Microsoft was like, "Hey, we could do that too."
Yeah.
And somehow even worse.
Yeah, it's even worse.
It's not about who's doing it. It's about the shittiness of the service.
Yeah. And meanwhile, Nintendo also charges for online,
and also they have an expansion pass.
And they have an expansion pass, which has a different tier. And now, granted, their expansion pass and their online is much cheaper.
Oh God, yeah, it's like $25 for a fucking year or something. It's crazy.
But guess what? You don't get any new modern games to play for free, whether you can keep them or not.
Good internet. Yeah. Oh,
yeah, good online play. No, that's not.
Yeah. You get classics that they're very slow about updating.
What? They just put out 2 N64 games after like 6 months. What are you talking about?
Yeah, they did. You're right.
Is Urban Champion on the system yet?
I have no fucking clue. I don't even look at that shit anymore because all the retro offerings on every system are fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Like the only, that is one thing I will give Microsoft 100% of the benefit of the doubt on is they've done more with backwards compatibility than either of the other two.
Oh, sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, they're the only ones that actually seem to care, which is fucking crazy because PlayStation and Nintendo have, like, such much richer libraries of classic games.
Well, so the on the backwards compatibility front, and not that it wasn't a purposeful decision, but the backwards compatibility got all fucked up for Nintendo because they switched back to cartridges.
I mean, that's fair.
So you can't. I mean, they went 3 generations with a tiny little disc and then 2 regular sized discs and then switched back to cartridges. So it's like, but they could put some of those disc games on their service.
I mean, that's fair, but also
compatibility offerings.
How hard is it to add a fucking ROM?
Oh, it's not. That's what I'm saying. They could put those on their service as backwards compatibility, or as offerings. It doesn't just have to be the super classic stuff. It can be Wii stuff too.
I need to do like a breakdown of like when Nintendo Switch Online started with like the NES games and how many are there now and how long it took them to get to that number. Because I bet it's ungodly stupid.
Yeah.
All right, that is it. That is a lot. So I hope you're still here. And if you're not, well, then you won't hear this anyway. So whatever. I got word, Anthony, I know you were going to bring this up, but I got word that Phoenix Down is going to finish Greedfall. They're recording today, so that episode will be live next week.
And they're planning on doing like a once a month thing, so Terrence and I have to go back to the drawing board.
Man, I got to tell you, Greedfall is an excellent game if anybody hasn't played it.
Anthony, you guys could still run that on the same feed.
Yeah, we probably will, but we probably won't use, because we were going to do Gaiden, right? And talk about comic books for a while. But we probably might use the same feed, but we'll call it something else. Or
it's much easier to use an existing feed than to create a new one, because creating a new podcast feed is a giant pain in the ass.
Understandable.
Oh, but anyway, if you'd like to send us emails, again, to tell us how wrong we are and how much we suck, you can send us to podcast@ztgd.com. Feel free. You can also tweet at us.
I don't feel like we get enough hate emails anymore. I miss when we used to get hate emails.
I don't.
It's because we stopped like care. Like we didn't get worked up about it. So like, if you don't feed the trolls don't come back for more food.
That's true.
So that's why I always tell people, don't give oxygen to negativity. Like it does not do well.
You know what I think about that? Fuck you, Ken.
I've heard worse. It's fine. You could tweet hate at us on Twitter at ZTGD Radio as well. So be sure to do that because I love it. I eat it for breakfast. But that's all I got. So hope you enjoyed the show. Otherwise, we'll be back next week. If nobody has anything else, we'll get out of here. Peace, bitches.
Alrighty, and it goes something like this.